welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Ben Hanson, joined as always by permanent co-host Timothy Turi.
I'm so permanent. Oh my God, it feels so permanent over here.
You know, we move your computer down when we're done with the show just so you can get some work done here. Otherwise, you are nailed to that chair.
Yeah, he's actually has concrete shoes.
That's right.
We poured them.
And you said you'll be sleeping with the fishes tonight.
Taking a trip later.
I did say that to you.
But you just bought me an aquarium with some beautiful fish in it. Thank you.
And the fish for today's show, we have the old guppy Ben Reeves.
That's me.
And the sturgeon Matt Miller.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah,
guys.
what do you do with
What
that?
are we talking about today? I honestly don't know what we're talking about today.
Oh, good. I'm excited to have you down here because you seem to know some things about some things we'll be talking about. But today's episode is really a party game spectacular.
Really?
In a certain kind of way. We're going to be covering Rock Band 4.
Oh, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's the main one. And then a bunch of other stuff that we'll get into. But for the final segment, to continue the theme of the party game we're rolling, it is with the guys from Jackbox, who made You Don't Know Jack for a million years. And then last year, they released the Jackbox Party Pack, which I consider the best party game ever
You got
made.
some drawful and some fibbage. And
Those are the reasons to play that.
Yeah, the rest
ones
are not great. But those two games are so much fun. You can play with 8 people on your phones. But next week, they're releasing the sequel to that, Jackbox Party Pack 2, which has new games and a sequel to Fibbage, more content for that whole thing. So Tim and I talked to them about the whole creative experience. They're down there in Chicago, and they're really, really funny guys. So it was nice just working backwards from them, figuring out, how do you guys make this insanely creative content?
yeah, it was great. So by party game spectacular, you meant Rock Band and Jackbox?
Yeah, there's some other
Those
games
two.
too.
There's some other games in there that are fun.
Technically,
They're like
like
a
a
party in your head.
It's like a party in your hands.
I bought the Mario
your
Maker
head.
stage
in your head
for,
and your hands.
For Smash Brothers. There's a new Mario Maker stage out there.
That's right.
Surprisingly good. It's really fun. It'll actually change up every time you go into the level. And like the little cat hand will come out and draw stuff up, and it'll just like rotate through the themes. But the music selection alone in that stage makes it great.
So it'll be building a Smash Brothers stage, and it will cycle through Mario Bros. 1, Mario 3, Mario World, and then New Super Mario Bros., and then just start the loop over.
But it's basically the infinite Smash Brothers stage, because every time you go in there, it's a whole new arrangement. Maybe there's like a certain amount. I assume there's a handful.
That sounds really good.
It is really
That's
good.
a good idea.
I recommend it if you have Smash on Wii U or 3DS.
And it's free, you said?
No. Is it $3?
No, that's
no.
ridiculous.
Ben and I were at the same party this weekend, and
I don't remember that.
you were there too, actually. We had this
I don't remember it, though.
exquisite scenario. Speaking of Mario Maker, where someone was sitting down, and I was showing it to them for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, this is really cool. So you can just like make any Mario 1 stage you want. That's awesome." They're like getting really into it and played it for a while, and then they're like getting used to the stage that I made, which was really, really annoying. And then they got to this point where they're like, well, this is great. Then the sequels will probably be like Mario 3 and Mario World, right? You'd imagine they'd keep going with it. And then I'm just like, hold on. I hit edit and then clicked into all 4 different like styles of Mario games, and they're just like, what?
Their eyelids shot off. They were
it's like
so amazed.
the same. And then we had to look for those. That was hard. You think contacts are hard to find? Eyelids blown off your eye. It's really tough.
You actually don't need them. You can live your life.
You can go without them.
That's true.
That's right. Anyway, that was great.
Fact.
Yeah, but that's the same part of me also then got into the Jackbox Party
true.
Pack 2 and checked out those new games, and like there's one that's all sound effect based called Earwax.
Really good. Basically, think of like
Yeah.
apples to apples, except like you're given like Donald Trump's sex life or whatever is the thing, and then you have
And then
like
there's a sound for that?
Then there's 2. You get to choose like on your phone. You'll get a bunch of sounds, and it'll be like wet
Which
sloppy
is the
fart,
sound?
screaming children, slide whistle, like I don't know, like morning bugles or whatever. And you just like, it turns out the one that's funny is the one with like a slide whistle going down, and then
A wet fart.
a wet fart or something like that.
So
it's
it'll
just
play
the
'em all.
name of the song, or so it's the name of the sound.
It plays
Right.
the sound as well.
So
Once
everybody else in
it's
the
in
room
there.
would hear you guys.
Not on
playing
your
these
phone.
songs.
You
have to
only
go by
get
the name,
words
yeah.
on your phone, but then it plays.
Then
and
it
your,
plays it later when you.
Yeah, your brain then creates a story about like, well, how could this be Donald Trump's sex life? And it always is funny. It's always creates some magic in your brain that really works out well. But
And magic in your brain is usually a slide whistle and a wet fart sound.
that's right. But Tim really annihilated in Quiplash, which is basically just jokes. Like everyone submits jokes and it puts 2 on a screen. Which one's funnier, everybody?
With the
Believe it or
prompt.
not. That's right. But believe it or not, Tim is super funny and he did a very good job.
This sounds
Way to
like
go, Tim.
Oh well, thank you, Ben.
Hanson-
You're hilarious in there too.
this sounds like the board game you created at one point. Didn't you have like a game where you just like picked a bunch of like
Yeah, you're saying I beat everybody to the punch?
you
Yeah, my
beat
friend
Jackbox the punch?
My friend
yeah.
Jesse and I created a board game called Korea Trivia back in the day, which then was kind of, I feel like the Cards Against Humanity crowd really absorbed that. So after that came out, we're like, we're kind of lost steam. But the idea was that it's Trivial Pursuit, and you can get points by answering the questions correctly or by writing in joke answers, and then people will rotate and choose which joke answer they like the best. It was really fun, but that was before the Jackbox era and the Cards Against Humanity era. So
How much money
window's
did you make
closed.
on that?
Let's see. I think I handed Jesse a 5 once accidentally.
Nice.
So.
Keep in mind, like if you want to see a sample of like us going nuts and playing a game like that, I think for Extra Life 2015, which we'll be talking more about on the road up to November 7th for our 24-hour Extra Life marathon, which we live stream every year.
For charity.
Jackbox is going to be a part of it.
It has to be. It's
Has
such
to
a
be.
good party
We
game.
also have a Quiplash test chamber up on the site right now.
That's true. That's actually in that bundle as well. But you know what else is up on that site before we jump into some hot Rock Band 4 goodness with Miller is on Tuesday we announced our new cover story, which is Mafia 3. And Reeves and I, we both went on that trip.
That's right.
Matt Burtz actually wrote the cover story, but we both went on there on that trip out to San Francisco, Novato, California, which is
It's like that middle ground, like with
country.
Irving, like where it's just like it's not L.A., it's not San Francisco, but there are a lot of developers here too.
It's not Novato.
that's exactly
That's
it.
right.
But Reeves,
Del
what,
Moragato.
what were your impressions of Mafia 3 from that trip?
You know what? I think I was actually a little more positive on it than you were. Because I remember talking to you after we saw the demo, and you're like, meh. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you're like, meh.
I'll explain later.
All right,
but go on.
all right. Well, basically, you made that the sort of fart sound of like Donald Trump on the toilet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
I
been a
actually
lot of
think-
Donald Trump in this podcast so far.
Well, get ready for
It's
4
gonna be
more
in the
years of
headline,
Donald
too.
Trump.
You want
Yeah.
those ratings or not, Miller?
Yeah, so basic premise of Mafia 3, like they debuted it at Gamescom. It's a new Mafia game, but they've pushed it forward into a new era, 1968, and it's set in a version of New Orleans. We actually went back and forth with them for like 5 minutes on like, come on, just tell us the name. Just
They
tell us
wouldn't
the
tell
name.
us the name of the city.
Yeah,
Really?
they're not calling it New Orleans. It's just a city based on New Orleans.
So they're constantly forced to say, in our version of New Orleans, like, yeah, what is it called? Does it have new in it? New Marais? What do you call it?
I mean, the answer in that situation is usually they haven't figured it out yet.
but
Yeah.
they actually sounded like they had figured it out. They just didn't want
It's
to tell
called
us.
New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. It's going
is
to be
that
something
the
like that.
is that the Infamous 2 one?
New Marais.
New Marais. Okay.
Yeah.
I think is it New
They
Marais?
should go with. Actually, they probably can't do that, can they?
The interesting part actually
Just take
is
it from
that
another game? No, they can't do that.
although the lead writer for Infamous 1 and he started working on Infamous 2.
Oh yeah.
He's the lead writer for Mafia 3.
He's also-
it's a
Oh, and
weird
he
connection.
insists on
Same
keeping
guy.
all the rights to the cities that he names,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, he's also the mayor of New Orleans.
I was gonna say
just so happens.
that he also begins the fake civilization.
Yeah, but open world game,
It's-
and so
it's
we
an
saw a
open world
couple
game.
demos.
Actually, I think it looks fun. The action's very. I don't know how you describe it. It's open world, so you like. They showed us a gameplay loop where you go around the city and you basically find guys and you can interrogate them, smash them up a little bit, and then that sort of opens up, sort of new missions you can go do. And
Right,
you
because
get-
you're tearing down the Italian mob and
Yeah.
kind of rebuilding it. So it's a little bit, I guess, like Far Cry 4, where you're kind of tearing down the propaganda and slowly working your way through that area to kind of reclaim this entire area for your own.
And you get
Okay.
money for doing all these missions, or rather, you're like stealing money from the Italian mob, and after you steal so much money from them, you earn that district of the city.
And that's the twist, right? Is that you're not playing the Italian mob this time. You are someone who has a revenge plot
Yeah.
against them in the late 60s.
Right.
It's
So the-
also later in the timeline.
You're a mixed race guy named Lincoln Clay, and which actually, the fact that you're not the Italian mob rubs me a little bit the wrong way. Just 'cause
Really?
for a game called Mafia, like because Mafia is Italian mob. Like,
Well, no, not necessarily. It's just
it's about
a
the
crime
mafia.
family.
It's a mafia story.
Right,
I
and so
don't
it's still...
know. I think Mafia has always been associated with Italian mob.
That's
rather
their.
than,
It is
But
associated, but their definition of mafia is like, oh, it's about the crime family. So there's no reason it can't also be about the black mob.
And moreover, it is about the Italian mafia. It's just you're taking them down,
you're just.
right?
I mean, I
like that it has something different there. That it's not forcing itself to
I like
stay
that too.
true to something that maybe feels a little stale.
I came around on it. You guys are right. So anyway, I thought it looked cool. The there's a scene where they showed us like driving through the city and like you're interrogating a guy while you're like driving and like past cars and stuff, and he gets freaked out, and then you can choose to kill him or not.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit burned out on open worlds. It was weird being like neck deep in Metal Gear Solid 5 while going on this cover story trip because that's all we could think about. And I remember it was funny because Reeves kept asking him questions like, so can you make like a stealth run in this? Can you bring people back to your base? He's asking all these very specific Metal Gear Solid 5 questions, which is totally fair because
Add
that's all
a little
we were
bit of
thinking about.
context though, like the demo they showed us, they started out with a stealth run. Like they kept sneaking around things, and I'm like, oh, how deep is the stealth? Like, is that a thing where you can like
you
hide
hide
bodies?
bodies?
Like, do you have a buddy system?
Sure, I mean,
can you Fulton guys?
In a post Metal
There's all
Gear
obvious
world,
things.
and the Metal Gear is also one of those things where it's like, I have a feeling that we're going to see similar systems in play with other open world games in a big way in the future. I think we're going to see a lot more like base building, people capturing type stuff in future games.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about it on the podcast,
yeah, for
but
sure.
I can definitely see that. But what has me really excited, I think I'm a little bit burned out on open world games. I've never been a huge fan. And so the gameplay, it's like, that looks totally fine. I don't think it's reinventing the wheel. It looks solid. But I'm really, really excited about the setting.
Yeah.
And what has me the most excited about this game is actually the racial component. I think it's a really interesting idea to basically be role-playing a black man, mixed race, but we'll go ahead and say black. They say the world sees him as black anyway. But a black man in the South in the 60s. And like the language is extreme. Like the cops will call you the worst words. And just having that certain level of role-playing that environment. I've never done that in a game. It sounds really interesting.
I think I read in the cover story that, in other open world games that the cops can kind of be seen as a nuisance or kind of a pest. And in this one, they're like a legitimate threat, in a way that based on your race that they are going to be extra, extra, extra hard on you.
Which is kind of the classic thing even from Mafia 1. I mean, that game was, I think people always reference it now because if you run red lights or stoplights, the cops will come after you. So I like that they're continuing that line of the cops being very serious in the Mafia series, except now it's also for a whole nother reason.
Not quite gameplay wise though.
Yeah.
You don't get in trouble for running red lights. Although they do this thing where they have the scene where you're like in your car driving and there's this little inset of a mirror on the top of the screen.
Like a rear view mirror?
So it's a rear view mirror where you can see like what's happening behind you even when you're not in first person mode, which is a little weird, but it's kind of cool because it would highlight things like if a cop car did a flip behind you, it would kind of highlight that.
That's a weird thing is
window.
Because like you get a perspective advantage by being in third person, but at the disadvantage of knowing what's behind you. So you can't get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I always liked that in like Burnout where it would like crash would happen and it would pan over really quick and show you what happened and then pan back.
Yeah, actually, the UI element is another thing that I was really captivated by in this game. It's weird to be like, oh, the racial components in the UI.
It's one of those things when you see good UI, like it's really good. Like something like Dead Space or something. It's just like, this is noteworthy.
Well, something to do in this game that I've never seen before. And please email in to Podcast Game Forum if you have seen this, because I absolutely love this idea. Is they have like the waypoint system in the open world, and then the way that they make it appear on the screen is with little temporary signs on the sidewalk. They're like white signs, and when you get closer, they'll just slowly fade out. But it's not just like the icon flashing on the screen of like, take a right here. They actually put them in the world and like move on the sidewalk as if they're normal signs along the sidewalk. And they blend in so well. And I was obsessed with this. Like,
actually, it looks pretty good.
It looks great. I'm like, where did you get this idea? Like, I don't know. I don't think we've seen anybody else do it.
They said something like it's supposed to be Lincoln's sort of visual representation of Lincoln's understanding of the city. He just knows the city so well that he can drive wherever he needs to go. He knows where he needs to go.
It's just perfectly subtle. I really, really loved it.
They had something similar.
No, you can see it. Like they stand out a little bit because they're
You start to
white.
look for it, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
They had in Getaway, if you remember that game, like the navigation system was like blinkers. It would blink. You'd blink. It would start
that's
going when
right.
you needed to turn.
Could be
it reminded
confusing
me of
sometimes,
that, but that was a little too subtle. Whereas I think this stands out a little bit more.
In that game, Getaway, you wouldn't know if it was like a hard right or like a soft right or something like that. So
yeah, definitely. But we have a whole month of content for Mafia 3. So gameplay footage, a bunch of interviews. Just speaking on the video side of things, there's also a video about like Hangar 13. Who are they? Where they came from? Stuff like that. So the building of the new studio.
Going up this Friday about the making of the city and just like the making of whatever mysterious name the city is, and just how they took inspirations from New Orleans, but then sort of remapped the city a little bit too to like make it fun to play around in.
It's a novel idea. Yeah. Make the city fun. No, but look forward to that. It's gameformer.com/Mafia3 for our big hub. But Miller,
Hey, man.
let's talk about Rock Band.
All right.
Rock Band 4 came out on Tuesday. You are Mr. Music himself.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the podcast, Mr. Music.
Yeah. Anything I can do for Mr. Podcasts.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
How do you make all this music?
It took a lot of work putting all this music together for Rock Band 4, but I've been working with harmonics for a while and really
Now it's
turned
out. It's got to feel.
So what do you
good.
think of your work?
I think it's pretty good. I was a little surprised that I wrote U2.
Wrote them into existence.
That I had made
just
them.
created them.
Breathed onto clay.
But you can't control the creative
Clayton?
process.
Adam Clayton?
And sometimes you make U2, and so
Come on, Miller. Rock Band 4. What do you think? Let's get this whole take.
I like
No, you're talking to a D&D
a legend
master. You don't
right
think he's
here.
going to roll with your improv here?
Oh.
Enough of this nonsense. What's this dragon like? Come on.
Okay, so Rock Band 4 is pretty much Rock Band 3. I wish I had something more exciting to tell you about it, but that's what it is, except without some of the bells and whistles that Rock Band 3
So
had.
why would you not say that it's like Rock Band 2 or 1 then?
No, I think it's like that too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Rock Band 4 and
Is
and
it like Guitar Hero?
well, not anymore.
That's true.
Right. I mean, I think there's a pretty clear choice emerging this year for people who are interested in music games between a tried and true formula that is available in Rock Band 4 and somebody who is trying to do a number of innovations. And we don't, we haven't reviewed Guitar Hero yet, to be fair, but certainly what we've seen of Guitar Hero is that they're going back to the drawing board on any number of different features, from how you get the content to the guitar controller itself. Guitar Hero's really different. Rock Band 4 is a lot like the previous entries, and that's not a dig against the game. In many ways, I think it's a reason to be excited about it, because there is this concept of like both an experience that carries over of what you've played before and the joy that a lot of us got out of those Rock Band games over the years, kind of coming back and having more new songs, having it on your new gen system. And that's, for me anyway, I can't speak for anybody else, that's really exciting because I loved those games. Obviously, everybody remembers that there came a point that the quote-unquote phenomenon of music games got out of hand. And there were so many Me Too games going on there that that they just kind of like...
Sorry, the Me Too and You Too. It's just
There was
something there. I couldn't figure it out, but I could only laugh.
There were a lot of these other games, right? And not all of them were of that same quality of what Harmonix puts out. And people burnt out on it, plain and simple. I think Rock Band 3 is arguably the most sophisticated and complex music game that was ever made, and I include now Rock Band 4 in that. I think
Would
Rock
you include Rocksmith?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I mean,
What about Rock Revolution?
I think that
Rock of
Rocksmith
Ages.
and some of those other games that have been about teaching guitar are in many ways less games and more music education tools.
Sure.
And particularly, by the way, the most recent ones are quite excellent music education tools. Both Bandfuse and the recent Rocksmith
Bandfuse. I forgot about that.
were both actually. I know Bandfuse was lesser known of those two, but those were actually were really good games to just straight up, I want to learn how to play guitar.
Right.
As a music game, neither of those came close to what Rock Band 3 offered. And Rock Band 3 had all this stuff. You could play pro guitars. They added keyboards. There was online play. That stuff has in Rock Band 4 been stripped away and brought back to the core experience of what you had in the older Rock Band games.
Well, that's all anybody wants. I mean, Rock Band, for me, and I think, 95% of the audience?
I would say even 98% of the audience.
Let's go with it.
They want just that core.
Let's say 98.4.
Okay, let's
To
go
be
with
fair.
Ben's number
Yeah,
here.
Just, I want to be able to set it up in a party environment, get 4 friends together, look at a great set list, play some songs, call it a day. I don't care about how in-depth the story mode is or any of that crap.
I think that's what Rock Band 4 is shooting for.
Right.
There are undoubtedly going to be people who I think are a little frustrated that you have a game on a new gen system that is in many ways more scaled back, pared back than what its predecessor was in Rock Band 3. But like you said, most people don't care about that other stuff.
For sure.
They just want great songs. They want it to play well. There are a few novel, cool little things in Rock Band 4 that we'll talk about, but by and large, it's a tried and true experience. You can use your old instruments. Although on Xbox, you got to get like an adapter thing.
Okay, so it's easy just to plug in the USBs from the PlayStation 3 hardware into the PS4, and then that works. But with 360, there's got to be an extra layer of...
There's like an adapter thing you got to get from 360 to Xbox One. But you do have the ability within any given family of the systems to carry your full DLC catalog forward. And that is huge.
It's huge. I had a tough time with it.
Yeah.
I went from PS3 to PS4.
Yep.
And they posted on their site, Harmonix, about like, hey, this is how you do it. You have to go into the store page, not within the game, although that's another route we'll get to in a bit, but actually through like the PlayStation Store. And then you go to like add-ons, and then you go to view all, and then you sort it to the free stuff. And it listed a bunch of downloadable tracks, and they were all listed as unavailable except for the James Brown pack that I bought. But I spent a lot of money on Rock Band songs. I was like, why is only the James Brown stuff coming through?
Are they all supposed to be supported?
When did you look at this?
This was last night.
Okay.
Yeah, I was really frustrated. So then I guess you can also go in the music store, like in the game itself.
In the in-game, yeah.
Yeah, and but with that, it wasn't showing up. There wasn't like an easy option for like download all these things. There's something where it's like import cache, and that didn't do anything.
It's tedious. There's no two ways about it. I mean, part of this is a function of like they have done something that really, as far as I can think of, nobody else has done in terms of having that like cross generational downloadable content kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the platforms, whether it's Xbox or it's PlayStation, just aren't set up for that, right?
Right.
And so they've given you the option to get that old DLC content, but it is ultimately a little bit on you to kind of like, okay, I'm going to go through this menu and piece by piece reassemble my catalog. And it takes a while. It's kind of a pain, especially for someone like Brian Shea or myself, who really put hundreds of dollars into our Rock Band catalogs over the years. It's going to take a lengthy process.
And Jeff Cork as well, he was talking about how he went in that store, and the way he had to do it is just trying to remember which songs he had downloaded and like find them in the store. And then he said that even some of those would not register that he's already bought it. So it'd say like, oh, this song's available for $1.99. Then you'd have to click on that, and then it would say, oh, never mind, it's good to download.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing that's like re-downloading on any system you can encounter. But it made me think of the Wii's Virtual Console to the Wii U, and how you could go back and find, as they added Virtual Console games to the Wii U, but Nintendo had a surcharge of like $1.50 per game you'd already purchased, and it's still a runaround, and it's still difficult to. It can still be kind of annoying with getting the Wii U stuff, but at least Rock Band didn't try to do any sort of like it's a quarter per song.
Yeah, it's generous.
Yeah, it shouldn't be something that's looked at as like, oh, good on them, but like at least it's not being.
I mean, charged. I'll go on record as saying that I think good on them. I mean, I think that the fact that they've gone out of their way to make all of that old content available on their new system is a really big deal. It's just, unfortunately, it's a pain to get it all.
Right. Well, I don't think that they could get away with Rock Band 4 the way that they did without, having that in mind and supporting that old catalog.
It's probably not their fault that it's that hard to get either.
It's hard to know how to lay blame there, but certainly, and I'm not even sure I'd lay blame on Sony or Microsoft. It's just not something they ever planned for.
Sure,
right?
Last generation was the dawn of DLC, and who could have known that it would carry through in this extent?
Exactly.
Did you notice anything? One thing, talking to the last generation, and I guess the generation before, because
talking about
Rock
the
Band.
generation.
Yeah, talk about my generation where I played Guitar Hero for the first time. I always veered towards Guitar Hero as a game and the peripherals because it always felt like crisper and more precise. And there's always something about Rock Band that was just muddier for me. I just didn't feel like I was on point. And part of that had to do with like there's no click on the strum bar.
I think it's 100%.
It's a big part of it. But in playing some Rock Band on our live stream on Tuesday, while my guitar was working,
I heard you broke a guitar,
it just stopped
actually,
working.
Yeah.
It was a weird deal.
Smashed it over the side of the stage.
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. I broke it in. But it felt better. Everything felt a little bit crisper. It was not like what I remembered from the Guitar Hero days, but it was way more accurate just to my personal taste than it had been in last generation Rock Band. I don't know if you noticed anything.
I mean, we're of differing opinions on this. Anybody who plays a lot of music games will tell you they have a favorite, right? They either love the Rock Band guitar feel or they love the Guitar Hero feel. I always leaned a little bit towards Rock Band. I liked that there wasn't a click because a lot of my enjoyment came from like the experience of just engaging with the music itself, and I hated that there was this like click track going on. along with the music I was listening to. And I also liked the like recessed buttons instead of the raised buttons. And for people who like the Guitar Hero guitar, it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
They love those like raised buttons and feel like it's easier to use them. So now that said, I do think Rock Band 4 feels like it's really precise. Part of it, their auto calibration system works wonders. It totally, like, you hold your guitar up, you get it set up with your TV, and you're good to go.
If I may, though, it's annoying when you have the Rock Band 1 or 2 guitars that don't have the sensors.
Right.
Because it wants you to hold the guitar up and have that flashing calibration. But when that doesn't exist, you just have to let it run through its course. And then after it fails a couple times, then it'll let you do the manual style.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about issues that are like about the things that they have given
For sure.
in the game that have made things way better for you, right? Like, well, screw Harmonix for letting me not have to spend $250 on new instruments. Because, those old instruments, some of them don't have the same functionality that the new ones do. And I mean, I think it's fair to mention those things, but I think on the surface level, if you got Rock Band 4 as the core experience of like, you're going to buy new instruments and you're going to get this new set of songs that I don't have any DLC from the old stuff. The core Rock Band 4 experience is really remarkable. It's a great set of songs. It's a little bit more maybe eclectic, as a group of songs than what they have maybe previously done. But for me, I didn't see that as a negative. I liked that. I think Harmonix always reminds me, and this set list in particular had this effect. It reminds me of that buddy of yours who like really loves music, and he gives you a mixtape, and you're like, I don't know half these songs, you know.
And now he forces you to sing them.
Well, but then you listen to him, and you're like, you warm up to that song because it's great music.
Yeah, that's actually. So I had a Rock Band party on last Friday with Rock Band 4, and that was my big takeaway. Is like you get excited seeing this list of songs. It's like, oh, okay, great. You know, they have U2 in here. Oh, I don't know any of these U2 songs. Like, oh, they have Black Keys. I don't know that Black Keys song. I think overall it's my least favorite set list.
Okay.
Like bass, like having that store is great, but I was pretty unimpressed by the songs. There's a couple.
It sounds like you really didn't like Rock Band 4.
That's not to be fair. I love Rock Band so much that like any new Rock Band I think is great. It's just the set list. Like we played Rock Band 4 for an hour and then went back to Rock Band 3 and Green Day Rock Band.
A question
Do you
based
think
off
they
that.
Just sort of tapped into all the most popular songs, like when they did the first 3 games. And
Well,
here it's like,
also,
we've covered all popular music now. Like here's
There's
the lesser known.
I think they would say that there's always songs that there's always new great songs that you can put in.
Of
But I
course,
think
the music master would say that.
But some of the
Mr. Music.
some of the like really classic rock songs, yes, I think have already been dealt with in Rock Bands 1 through 3. In addition, I think you also had the marketing muscle of MTV Games going with you when you were going for songs in some of the earlier installments, and that made a big difference.
Well, how do you think it works for something like Elvis Presley? It's cool they got Elvis in this game, and then Suspicious Minds in the song, which is a good song, solid song.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the song I'd really want to sing from Elvis. Do you know how that licensing works? Is it just cost a lot more to get Jailhouse Rock or something?
I don't know the answer to the question of like how much it costs, obviously, but I can say that the songs that they did select and that they put in, whether they're the things that you instantly recognize or not, just as a straight up like evaluation of what makes for fun gameplay and fun and really great music, it's a great set list from that angle.
But also with every instrument in mind,
yes,
too, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
That is what's really hard. You think about, and this was true even with some of the like DLC for old Rock Band games, they would put out the songs as DLC that were like the songs everybody loved, and sometimes you download them and you'd be like, yeah, finally they have this song, and you play it and you're like, there's no guitar part for 3 minutes in this song. This is not fun.
And thankfully in this game, it gives you a countdown to when you're coming back.
But by and large,
Go get a drink.
It doesn't happen a lot in this game, in Rock Band 4, because the song selections they've made, whether you realize why or not, they're pulling together into like a full set list that's really varied in the styles of play. If you're drumming, you're going to have to learn a lot of different patterns of drumming. If you're playing guitar, you're having to learn a lot of different things there in terms of the rhythms that you're going to have to learn, all that kind of stuff. And so I appreciate that about the way Harmonix has put this together, even if the song list maybe doesn't add up to like these are the biggest hits ever.
Right. The classics that you know. All right, number one song to play in Rock Band 4, Miller. What's your favorite?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the really fun songs in there that taps into their new freestyle guitar thing, which we haven't talked about yet, is a song called "I Am Electric." Is a really cool one, and the freestyle guitar thing, by way of explanation for somebody who hasn't seen it yet, is sort of novel as a way to give more control and freedom to the guitarist.
You can kind of noodle.
Yeah, but not completely.
I don't even know what that means. What
but
does that
not
mean?
completely
Mr.
like
Music.
it
Explain
not
noodling.
completely make it free form, right?
Okay.
I think it would be dumb if you just got to a point and all of a sudden you could just hit anything on the guitar you wanted to and keep scoring big scores. And so instead, they put together this structure whereby you can create these solos, and they give you the boundaries within any given measure of the song of like, what should you be doing now? Should you be like finger tapping? Should you be playing slow like quarter notes? Should you be playing faster 16th notes? And that's all kind of like laid out there so that you can make your solo sound kind of cool, but in order to keep your streak alive and keep your multiplier up, you have to do what it's saying that you should do within that boundary.
Right.
I haven't been paying attention too much to the lead up to this game, but does the keyboard return?
No.
Nope. Were you paying attention to what Miller said earlier?
No, I haven't been paying.
No, I
attention.
wouldn't encourage
when are we
anyone,
starting
really.
the podcast? Actually,
I wanted to follow up on something off the solos. Are traditional solos in there anywhere?
Yeah.
You can just have like a really hard expert solo if you want still.
Well, what you can, and this is actually really key, I think, to how they handled that, is that if you tap the D-pad at any point when you're playing guitar, you turn off the freestyle stuff.
Oh, that's smart.
So if you just want like, I love this song, I want to play and hear the solo that what's-his-face played, you can do that. But
Eddie Van Halen is who you're talking about.
yes, exactly. Yeah. If you want to kind of have that experimentation stuff going on, then you just don't tap the D-pad and you get the solo stuff.
Okay. The other thing, it's almost probably time for us to be done with Rock Band. I don't know. But Rock Band 3 was great because you could get Rock Band 2 and Rock Band 1 tracks in it.
Yeah, you have to pay to import it, but yeah.
Yeah, pay to import like $5 for a ton of them. You could borrow a disc from a friend and get them all for
It was a
$5.
good deal.
Is there anything like that in addition to the DLC carrying over?
The DLC carries over, and as of now, the on-disc stuff doesn't, which is a huge deal. They have been working, and I know that they're looking into it, how they can do that.
Right.
But as of the last that I heard, that it was an unresolved issue.
You know, you got to wonder if it has something to do with digital music rights versus something that's printed on a disc.
Yeah, maybe so.
Who knows? It sounds complicated as hell.
So don't throw away your old consoles.
Not yet.
No, don't throw away your old consoles, but do consider, if you miss the old Rock Band, I think Rock Band 4 is a great game. I think that it looks really nice on new gen systems. You can bring in this big catalog of old stuff that you have. They've got a fun little tour structure that's got some humor to it and lets you choose between making a bunch of money or making a bunch of fans or having cool clothing styles. And these are like choices you make as you progress through the tour. And I don't know. I mean, I think that there's nothing that it's hard to sell the game as being anything other than like a continuation of what you hopefully loved about the old ones. And if you didn't, I mean, it's not like Rock Band 4 is going to recapture your attention.
You can spend some money, get friends over, and play an awesome rendition of Uptown Funk, which is clearly the best song.
That sounds like a blast.
Rock Band
I cannot
4.
wait to play that.
does it frustrate you at all that Guitar Hero is also coming out this year? And I say that because it just seems like a couple years ago when the music heyday was happening, the reason we got burnt out was because there were all these various games coming out at the same time.
Yep.
And if that hadn't happened and it was just been like one game, maybe there wouldn't have been like this collapse in the music game sort of genre, and we'd still have those games continuing without a break.
Well, to be fair, I think that Activision probably would have pounded that into the dirt the same way that they do with a lot of their franchises.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If that hadn't happened, maybe that wouldn't be a problem. And like, is it a problem that we're having that again this year, where it's like, well, now there's, 2 music games coming out? Like, are we at risk of like continuing to oversaturate the market?
The short answer is yes. I mean, I think in an ideal world, it would be a lot better to see one of these franchises come back first, and then if there was a lot of enthusiasm, to see them both come back. But that said, that's not the way the business works. I mean, these are two competing publishers and developers who were both, I'm presuming, independently came to the decision that it was time to like revive these franchises that that they thought would have value. On the bright side, I think that they're offering very different experiences this time. I think one of the big problems that happened in that period where, Rock Band 3 was released was that all of the games were kind of the same. We talked about some distinctions between the different guitar controllers and stuff, but by and large, this was like, you got a band get-together game for one, a band get-together game for the other, and they basically both play the same. I don't know. I mean, that's what was the problem. Where it's here, I think they're going to be offering something very different from one another, and that might save it. I will say this, that if neither Rock Band 4 or Guitar Hero Live do well this year, I don't know that we're seeing music games coming back in the next decade.
Except for Amplitude. Everyone look forward to Amplitude.
Well,
clearly the best.
I mean,
game.
Amplitude. I love Amplitude, especially because it's so much better than Frequency.
Incorrect, but go on.
But I think that Amplitude is sort of playing in a different ballpark, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's a much smaller game than
Costco Field?
than what Rock Band is doing. And so Rock Band and Guitar Hero are definitely both litmus tests, and they are litmus tests at either ends of the spectrum, right? Rock Band is offering, do you still want this legacy experience? Guitar Hero is embracing this whole sort of like live streaming culture thing. With the way it's handling its songs, it's doing this weird new guitar controller, the weird new sort of like live action sort of
FMV,
characters things, the FMV thing. That game's going to be like really different from what you're used to.
Yeah.
If neither one of those can capture the attention of the music game consumer and connoisseur,
We're done here.
I think we're done.
I haven't felt that much hype around Rock Band yet.
I
don't know about
really
you guys.
haven't either, but I'm rooting for it. It's always
I
a
would
good
love
time.
for it to succeed.
I
I
would
like
love
that game
for
a
it to
lot.
succeed.
Like, I
Look,
don't know.
in the least, you should go out and buy Beatles Rock Band and the old instruments.
yeah.
Just do yourself a favor.
Just a nod.
Beatles Rock Band is amazing.
But speaking of returning from the dead, Reeves, we should talk about.
I'm back.
Hey,
everybody.
Holy Christ!
Yep.
You moved the boulder.
I thought I got rid of you.
It wasn't well
I
documented.
even
but
clicked the car into reverse and did another one, and then
You left the keys in the drive.
Let's talk about Transformers Devastation.
Yeah.
What's going on with this game?
Yeah. So it's a Transformers game.
But it's such a weird mashup. So it's Platinum, the
It's
Japanese
a very
developer.
weird mashup.
is
It's-
it that weird?
I don't think it's that weird.
It's so the guys
No.
who make
Japanese developer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I
Who
mean,
loves Transformers?
Sure. But why is it not weird to switch from High Moon to now going super retro G1 from a Japanese developer? I think it's
classic
pretty
license.
drastic.
I think the High Moon games didn't sell as well as maybe Activision had hoped. I think those games were great, and I loved them a lot, and I wish I'd love more of that. But at the same time, like, this is a totally different beast, and actually it's a really fun game. My review just went up on the site yesterday, and
Give us a number.
it's an 8.
Great. All right, moving on. No,
So no, but think Platinum Games, think Bayonetta, and I think this game is heavily modeled after Bayonetta.
It's almost more complex than Bayonetta in a lot of ways, actually.
Is it? I guess combat wise, I don't know if I felt that, but
It feels like there's a lot of moves and a lot of like difficulty settings and the challenge mode stuff. But
different
that's it. I haven't
characters.
played it all.
Did you start this thing too, Tim?
I've played it. I played it extensively for a demo, but just like as far as
Okay.
the different characters and how they all interact with the combo systems differently, and like the way you keep things going, and then vehicle transformations and upgrades and loot. Like I feel like there's a lot more moving parts than Bayonetta, but the comparison.
well,
is like,
in terms of, I'm just talking about the combat itself. So you have the combat system, which I think is modeled after Bayonetta, to the point where there's even a slowdown mode. Where, like, if you hit dodge at the right time, the world
It's
slows.
called Hitch Time.
It's,
Hey, that's
grind
good.
time. And so there's that. But then, like Tim said, you have like 5 different Transformers you can play as, and they all function slightly differently. And when you actually perform a combo correctly, you get an opportunity to hit one more button. It's sort of a timed button press, and if you do that correctly, you launch into this like last finishing flourish where you transform into your vehicle mode and like hit him with your bumper or something.
It's funny, like,
it's kind of a little ridiculous looking,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's a lot of fun and it looks really cool.
I started it last night, and it's just funny to be in the middle of a combo as Optimus Prime, and then just like for brief second turn into the truck and like ram him real quick,
Yeah.
then like turn back into the robot and keep punching. What are you doing, Optimus?
That's great too because like his Optimus is like Prime's trailer would just like come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It would just like just quietly come from off screen. It's
like,
and
is
just
it-
attach itself to like I want to follow the life of just the trailer.
Does it have
I
its
think
own
doing when it's
sentience?
not attached.
I
to it.
think one of the things that I've seen in this game that I love is the embracing of the silliness of the original Generation 1 Transformers stuff. Like, for instance, the lack of conservation of mass and scale in these characters.
right.
Like, you
Just
have
makes no sense.
Oh, yeah.
you have characters in this storyline that are like, he's big, now he's not as big as he was, and it's just weird.
And then now Megatron can fit in the back of a truck.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God, I thought he was like the size of a tank. Like, I don't know what's going
and
on.
he does transform into a tank in this game.
But then he gets
But-
into the back of a dump truck. Am I wrong?
in this game,
Yeah.
maybe I missed that scene. What do you
That was the
actually saw that? In the
beginning.
That
game?
was in the preview
Okay.
build I saw. There's a point that he jumps into the back of the Constructicon who turns into a dump truck.
Well, Miller, I want you
shoots
to
you from
know
there.
that there was a YouTube comment for a test chamber in this game that said that you don't know anything about G1 Transformers.
Oh, really?
Which made me want to vomit.
What did they call out? What did I not?
It was just a general statement, but Miller's desk is covered in this crap. He knows more about Transformers G1 than anybody on
But
the
you know
planet.
what? It's the internet.
No, that's not true.
I stand by it, Miller, more than anybody on the planet.
He eats Transformers for breakfast.
You know what? It's just like Dark Souls hasn't been around for a long time, but the community and the knowledge around it runs deep. And there's just a certain culture where those people really want to call out anytime they don't agree with something exactly. Assuming that crosses over with Transformers in a different way. But
How is the story in this thing? Is it
well-
satisfying on a nerdy level?
It's maybe for like uber nerds like Miller, but
Right, like super dweebs without lives like Miller?
it was entertaining actually in the sense that
Thanks,
they
man.
got
Dweebo losers.
they got a bunch of actors from the original 80s cartoon to come and reprise their roles.
Who didn't they get?
The people who are dead.
yeah.
Orson Welles?
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, like they're the guy who plays Bumblebee, the
Yeah.
guy who plays Prime.
They didn't get Starscream, did they? Is he alive anymore?
I don't know. Is he alive still?
Because Starscream is
He might not
easily
be. It's
easily
hard-
like imitated, but you cannot nail
Yeah.
Starscream.
How
in this
easily is it imitated, Tim?
Oh, okay.
You will take orders from me!
All right. That's it.
That was pretty
That's
good,
it.
actually. I
Thank
thought-
you so
Our
much.
mic's
It
cut
was-
out. I'm
It
sorry.
was
Yeah.
dead on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
the story itself is like Megatron invades the city with his army of Decepticons, and they're like trying to something about Energon and transform it. But it's actually the
what do you think of that, Internet?
And then I'll get you next time, Prime.
yeah. There's a lot of that.
How much do we know about Transformers now?
Yeah.
There is one battle sequence in like space, which is kind of awesome.
Is that the part against Starscream? Like in
Yeah,
the,
you saw that, right?
what is it, Space Bridge? What do they call it?
Yeah, the space bridge.
Yeah, that was
That's what they
really
call that.
disorienting fight. I want to ask you.
Actually, it is, but it looks cool. But it's also kind of like, where is he? Like, it's very
exactly.
It's like the one moment in the game where I'm like, I wish this game had a lock on.
yeah.
But the rest of the game, you don't really need it.
Isn't there a lock on?
No, it's sort of like auto locks on the camera.
Sure,
sort
sure.
of like
That's it.
spins around the character, but you don't manually. It's not like Bloodborne where you manually lock on.
Right.
The characters.
Auto lock rollout.
We've seen how awesome the game looks, and we've been drooling over that since the beginning. But I want to know from you. I got the impression that this game was very challenging.
It was very challenging, actually.
Yeah, I want to know just because like that platinum like stylish action game like Bayonetta can be very tough. Like where does this rank up with like some of those styles of games and
I
challenges?
think it's right up there with. I would say Bayonetta is a good comparison.
Devil May Cry.
Still. Devil May Cry, like on normal mode. So there's 3 difficulties, and I tried out the easy difficulty is totally doable if you feel like you're a wuss in that area. It's not that bad. There's also health
you.
packs and stuff you can get that you can buy and acquire. So if you're getting like, especially at the end, the last couple boss fights, I like relied on health packs pretty heavily.
Sure.
So it's
There's like challenge rooms to upgrade.
there's
stuff too?
challenge rooms. I think the medium difficulty, if you're experienced in games like Devil May Cry, you can totally do it.
Okay.
The other part, the aspect of the game we haven't even really talked about this. You touched on the loot stuff, but then there's other scenes like sequences throughout the game that like shake things up, which I think they do a really good job of like it's not just combat all the time. There's one scene where you transform into vehicle mode. They make good use of the vehicles, and you're like racing through the city, racing another guy. There's one scene that's kind of like a 2D like shooter level where
Oh,
you're
cool.
running across the highway just shooting a character.
Platinum's good at that. Like
There's like a
throwing in
top down like area
stuff.
where you're like running from guys.
So it's not as varied as like the Fall of Cybertron, though, right? as far as the gameplay goes? I mean, from what I played, it's just a lot of combat rooms, like invisible walls and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They're such different.
it's such a different beast. I don't know
Yeah.
how to compare the two, to be honest. I think they just do a good job of shaking up the action. I just wanted to like point that out. And then in terms of the loot, you are constantly like enemies are constantly dropping items. There's tons of crates scattered around the environment. There'll be like a little like button over there that you can hit, and then it spawns this like ring of coins, and if you collect all the coins, then it pops open a chest, and then you get a bunch of like stuff out of
Like
there.
the Mario coins.
Yeah.
Video games.
Weird.
It's a little weird, but anyway, that's all this loot that you can go back to your base and you can equip. And there's not as much variety to the loot as I would like, but you can take like lower level items and then you can like infuse that into your higher level gear,
Like a
and
Puzzle
level
and
that up.
Dragons type thing.
Yeah,
Or
basically.
Destiny.
Or Destiny.
Or Destiny.
Right.
I don't even think they call it infusion. That's what Destiny
what's
calls
that?
it.
Oh, God. Don't get Miller started.
Nope.
Yeah, Destiny, you wouldn't understand.
How crazy is it that 2 generations in a row we've gotten like 3 really solid Transformers games? Like
I think it's great. Like
And one solid Transformers movie.
I haven't seen
Which
that
one?
one.
The first
the
one?
1984 like cartoon.
No. Just the first one. I like that first
You actually think the
Transformers
first
movie.
one's good?
Yeah.
You know
I'll
what? You know
defend
how
that movie.
I
Those
actually
live in a different place.
I have all the Transformers live action movies, and you know how I watch them? I just fast forward to the scenes where ILM was directing,
Uh-huh.
and I watch that scene, then I go to the next scene at ILM.
And shovel popcorn in your mouth, laughing.
no,
That sounds
I
about right.
love watching those big robots turn into cars.
Yeah, well,
I love the image of Miller watching that with a mouthful of popcorn, just Transformers, doo-doo-doo, yeah.
Well, plus we're going to
holding an Optimus
Yeah.
Prime in one hand.
Yes.
Just a buttery Optimus Prime. It's so good. Just explodes the popcorn, just attacking the popcorn bowl.
And then I just fast forward to the next scene.
That sounds about right. Well, then you
sounds
got
like a
4
good way
more
to-
movies on the way. One of them, I think, focuses on Optimus Prime's trailer.
This is the
I think
DLC.
it's
The
announced.
Follows him
DLC
around,
for
yeah. That's
Destruction is actually. Yeah, it's just the
Did
trailer.
anybody in
just-
here watch the Mark Wahlberg one?
Also, the trailer.
of course he did.
I totally saw that movie. I saw that movie in the theater.
Was it great? I don't know how to ask.
I heard that Grimlock shot that they pimped out and they had like signs in every movie theater with it. I heard that was like the last 3 minutes of the movie. Is
What's
that
what?
true? The Grimlock shot?
Well, the Grimlock
Grimlock scene.
The
It was
Grimlock.
just with him roaring.
Yes, the
and I heard it's at
Grimlock.
the very
The
end.
Grimlock stuff doesn't show up till the end of that interminable film. It is so long. There's so many shots of Kelsey Grammer walking around looking confused.
And then he falls off a
He's
stage.
very confused why he's in that film.
He was reading the
is,
script, looking at the camera, doing like a
didn't-
Scooby-Doo shrug.
I didn't know Kelsey Grammer was in a Transformers film, but that is a weird selling point.
You
for
want
me.
to you want to watch it now, don't you?
I really do.
You should
What does
watch
he turn
it.
into? What vehicle?
No, he plays a human.
Space Needle?
Yeah.
Turns into a sadder
But-
version of Kelsey.
But again, I
plays a
totally
human.
I have that film at home and that film.
Feature masterpiece Criterion Collection.
The masterpiece of filmmaking, and I
years
turn
from
it
now.
on and I'll fast forward to like, oh, here's that one car chase where that one robot turns into a car and goes really fast and then hits another car and they both punch each other for a while, and then like that scene ends and Mark Wahlberg starts talking and then I just like skip
Which
to the
one
next
of those
scene.
if you
four
can,
movies?
if you can skip before you fall asleep.
Yeah, which one of those 4 movies has the best like action scene?
Ooh, great question. Singular sequence?
Singular sequence, I'm gonna maybe
good
go
question, too.
with the fight in the forest in
the first one?
the second movie.
Oh, that's the second one. Okay.
I'd go with in the second film when Shia LaBeouf's parents get high.
Oh, classic.
It's a real wacky
I love
Yes.
parents getting high in those types of movies, like Poltergeist. Just the parents, just like it's just such a weird deal.
the
Just show
parents in that movie are
like-
just there to be made fun of.
It's great. I
right?
like that a lot.
That's their sole purpose is like, okay, there's some 14-year-olds in the theater right now who really want to have
Make fun of their
parents who
yeah.
they can make fun
They
of.
Well,
wanna
that's what
have
Spielberg
parents.
says. I don't know if there's actually 14-year-olds that are rooting for that.
Do
you
those
know?
parents show back up in the 4th film? I really hope they do.
As Kelsey
No.
Grammer?
That's Kelsey.
No,
Just
fourth-
their severed heads on
the
a
fourth
spike, I
film,
think.
as far as human characters, is a pretty complete break. We don't really see what happened. It is a little confusing why like Bumblebee's best friend is just not
not
in
around.
the picture anymore.
Is he sad
Right.
the whole time?
No, like it's just like
He's a
it didn't
cold,
happen.
heartless robot.
That's true.
Hey, speaking of cold and heartless, should we move on from Transformers? Should we leave this?
I don't know why we would.
Hey,
right.
Transformers is good. It's an 8.
Hey, it's good. It's an 8. Give it a
It's good. It's an 8. Tagline.
Yeah. Well, this isn't reviewed yet, but the Battlefront beta went live
Yeah.
this week. I jumped into it last night.
All right.
Finally was excited to check that out because it's just been this mythical thing in my mind. I haven't played it at any trade shows or anything, but it's just this abstract idea of, DICE's Battlefield Star Wars game. This is going to be great. It's going to be great. And jumped into it last night and was reminded like, it's a modern shooter. I'm going to die again and again and again and be super frustrated. So I didn't have the best experience with it.
Reiner and I test chambered it.
Yeah.
So you can check it out there. And I mean, we got our asses handed to us a lot, but it's still so pretty and looks so good. And like, especially when you're on Hoth running around Echo Base and like starting the hangar, we had this great moment. I'll get to that in a second, but just like the way that like the snow looks and the way it crunches, because of course DICE is going to nail like the sound of the snow crunching on Hoth, and like you see like the kind of part like where snow gets crusty on top and like the little crystals reflect. They nailed it down to that. That's how hard they nailed Hoth. And then the sound effects are amazing and it feels really good at that level. But then we spawned in the Echo Base like hangar at one point, and it's just like, oh my god, this is like perfect. I can like imagine like Han Solo running across to get onto his Tauntaun to like get out of there. It's like it was bizarre seeing it like that. But we were running
ships you can't get into.
Exactly. That's the bummer. They're all little tokens. But we were running along, and suddenly our rebel, our alliance guy just like flies into the air. And like it's just like, what's going on? And then the camera pans, and it's just like Darth Vader angrily stomping towards us with his fist in the air. And it's just like Ryan and I both just like instinctively yelled. It's just like the most jarring thing just to suddenly have like a Jedi or a Sith like bearing down on you in the battlefield when you're just used to just like regular like gunplay.
We had a less majestic experience last night when we were playing, and we saw Darth Vader on the horizon in Hoth. And so we're looking at him like down the sights, like firing away. And then he just like awkwardly leapt what seemed like 100 yards towards us, and then like collided with our camera. And then, we died. Not sure exactly what happened. I guess his foot touched our head as he flew over us. And all right, call it a day.
I tried to get my hanger cable around AT-AT's legs. I just kamikazes.
So you're saying the rebellion has failed?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so crushed.
The transport was not away.
But in the beta, which is slightly more public now, I don't know if it's fully public or it's like invite only or how exactly it works. But in that they have like two maps, one that has ATs and STs on Hoth, and then one which is just kind of man on man. And then they also have kind of the horde mode, which was I was excited for because it has 2 players, and I know that in the eventual release you can do split screen, but in this one you can only do online for 2 players.
Hats off to them for supporting split screen.
Oh, it's especially DICE of all the companies now.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is good.
I'm more optimistic.
That's a good
now.
game for split screen, though. I feel
it
like
is
too.
Yeah, I'm excited to get like the full package and just start working through and leveling through that stuff on my own instead of just kind of this bastardized version where I'm kind of thrown into things not really comfortable.
It does seem like
yet.
the investment would be a big part of
what
you could
definitely.
or would not enjoy about the game, depending on how well they do it.
Right.
Was Hoth the only environment you can play on?
No,
for the
there's
beta?
another planet. It's in a lot of the ads that has kind of
The
snow
volcanic-
and volcanic
crags, lots of just like really dark rock and lava and stuff, and like gas vents coming out.
It's called like Scallywag or something like
it's
that.
like Scalia or something like that.
It's the pirate planet.
That's correct.
That's exactly right.
Space pirate.
Scallywag.
But I'm excited
It's
for the
definitely
eventual release.
Scallywag.
I heard a lot of people complaining though about like the token system and just the upgrades and like, do you guys?
Well, the
you guys
token
have
stuff.
fun? Like,
I was having less fun than I thought I would. I was ready to be swept away by Star Wars, and eventually I just wrapped it up and I was like, I'll just go watch Rebels.
Yeah,
again.
you know what? Like going and finding like an X-wing that's parked somewhere in the old Battlefronts and hopping into it and taking off from there, like going back from that, any step backwards to disconnect that fantasy is going to be a step back. It just is a step back. And it's like as if, No Man's Sky came out and everyone loved it and like, all right, we're doing something big. It's going to look better with No Man's Sky too, but there's like a loading time between the planet. It's like that's like the point of the illusion, and
my illusion also involves not getting shot every 20 seconds. But that's just a matter of skill. And I was playing on PC with a controller, so I was asking for it. So it's
You really
what are you
were.
doing?
I know. It's weird in that game not reloading. You have so many reflexes that are trying to trigger the reload button. But for the gun I was using, at least, it's on like a recharge, kind of like a heat system.
Oh, sure.
It's a surreal experience to be playing a first-person shooter and not have to worry about reloading.
smart being able to hold down the down button on the D-pad to switch between first person and third person on the fly.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really interesting. So you can check that out if you want. Tim, last night you finished Undertale?
I actually finished it this morning.
This morning.
Really?
All right.
You're not going to
All
like
right.
spoil this for me
not
now.
gonna spoil it
we're
in
not
the
going to
least.
spoil it. But
'Cause
Let's just talk about general impressions.
I'm
I
walk
need some
out.
motivation
I know
to
happens.
continue playing that, honestly, because I played the first half hour, and I'll be honest with you, I found it pretty boring. Like, I've heard so much praise about this on the internet, so why should I keep going?
Well, if Undertale, like the first 20 minutes I played, it feels like they are going for some sort of subversive commentary on RPGs from their earliest incarnations to now, which now we have this nostalgic knowledge of like what it means to be an old school RPG, and they're playing off of that. And I think part of that is it's got to take a little time to get rolling. And that first half hour, yeah, it's not going to stick with you. You got to play a couple hours before this stuff starts rolling. And we're going to keep it vague because a lot of this game is about these revelations and stuff.
But it's only a couple hours long, isn't it?
It's like
No,
6
it's.
or so.
I saw a Steam. I've heard people in the office say it's like 6 hours. I've seen Steam reviews that are 3 to 4. I played it for like 8 or 9 hours.
Really?
Yeah. So I think it's in this Steam counter. It seems pretty accurate for as I was keeping up with it.
Okay.
I didn't leave it running a lot at all. So yeah, but I'm not as over the moon on it as everyone else. It seems like it's walking this weird line between making fun of itself and the genre, and then wanting to hit like these really genuine notes of like character interactions or really like tender moments and stuff like that. And I couldn't really get a handle on what it wanted me to look at it as, and maybe that's part of the point. I don't know, but I really did like it. I think a lot of my reactions coming from like, well, if you look at the Steam reviews, it's overwhelmingly positive.
Highest rated PC game of all time on Metacritic right now.
I just feel like I picked out what this game was going to be.
Really?
Yeah.
I picked out what this game was going to be doing in the first half hour, and it delivers on that.
Yeah.
But I was just constantly waiting for like, okay, I think I know what they're going to do with this, and waiting for that next layer.
That was my same thing. Is there's so much hype about this game that I was just waiting for that moment where, I don't know, they just handed me a chocolate smoothie, like a hand came out of the screen, or just something miraculous happened. And I think the ending is super interesting, but I think a lot more of it than I thought going into is just the charm and the writing throughout the course of the game for me. Like this game feels like a crash course in boiling down a great video game personality into a couple simple lines. Really, everybody you meet in that game is interesting, and it makes me
Except for the main character, which is
sure.
Things happen
It's a
to this
vessel,
main character.
yeah.
It's like you look at this little RPG kid, and it's the dopiest looking.
I don't even like
kid.
the way they look. Yeah.
no.
That is another thing. Like, I don't want to focus on too much what's negative about this game, because I think they're doing like a lot of awesome things. And I can't wait to like hear what Kim and Joe and other people that love RPGs have to say about this, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of cool stuff. I love the little novelty of the combat system, which is about like it's like a little mini game. You're avoiding things that come in to attack you.
Yeah.
And it
I
gets
thought that
really
was-
creative.
And they get really creative with the way they play around with that. And there's a lot of the idea is like you don't know what you're getting into as you go into it. So we're gonna keep it vague, but the art style, it was really inconsistent, I'd say.
But on the flip side of that, I think we were both blown away by the music.
The music's so good.
It's
like,
unbelievable.
From their really like driving motivational like battle themes to like these sort of like Secret of Mana or Chrono Trigger-esque sort of more ethereal, haunting melodies that they use to fill like this space. Like, and it just sells it so hard in the exact same way those 16-bit games did.
Yeah, I remember a while back on the podcast we're talking about modern indie games and how everybody has the throwback genre, and how the genre that we felt like hasn't really been tackled or 100% nailed as far as an indie throwback was the JRPG genre.
And
I feel like this is it.
The ones that went for it were very on the nose. They'd have a sense of humor, but it'd be something like Cthulhu Saves the
Exactly.
World, where it's just a huge dozens of hours, whereas this boils down the experience into something that's under 10 hours for sure, maybe closer to 6 to 8 depending on how you play the game. Like it boils the essence of what made those games magical down, and then does something else on top of it that's really, really creative, and that I would recommend to everybody. But like, if you can shield yourself from some hype, like
Yes.
do it and just play it. So
we keep bashing the game. It was not great.
No,
but it's
it's-
another
it's-
half an hour just to
people
lower
are- yeah,
expectations
there you go.
perfectly.
They're not gonna like it.
yeah, exactly. But
There seems
anyway,
to be
You're not allowed to play this game. How's that?
It's too bad.
It's too special, and it's not on sale anymore.
this isn't
Thanks,
spoilery.
Konami. Oh.
This isn't spoilery. I don't think, right? But like,
Oh, come on, really?
well, it's
We're
just
almost out. We're almost safe.
It's just about the end of the game, is all I'm saying. No, it's about the combat system.
Right.
All right.
I mean, it's just like because you can like attack, but then you can also like talk and interact with enemies too.
It
while you're
opens
fighting
up
them.
the spectrum beyond just fighting.
Is
Yeah.
there more? as the game progresses, is there more to that?
You're only a half hour in.
seems?
We're going to shut this part of the conversation down.
All right.
Yeah, believe it or not, that's a thing in the game.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I know what line of question you're going down to, and this is frustrating for you, and I'm happy to talk to you more about it, but not right here.
Just tell me the end.
Well, you guys don't really talk off the air, so I don't know how that's going to
It
work.
doesn't happen.
But we should probably
I go
move on
mute
to.
after.
We should absolutely move on to emails next. Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. So we got a bunch of good emails. If you ever want to send something else for us just to read, a hypothetical, a cool question, it's podcast@gameinformer.com. We read a bunch every week, and then we choose the email of the week, and we'll send you a little thank you.
It's wedding cake from Tim's
It's
parents'
just a
wedding.
piece of wedding cake.
Wow.
They only have so much left, and the anniversary's coming up.
been
A
married
big
Make these good
anniversary.
30 years?
Yeah.
Is that?
They've been married for 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
2 years. Wow.
exactly right.
They finally did it.
It's all right. The first question is for my parents. Tim, how long have we been married? We think that you've been misinforming everyone. Oh, no, it's not from them. Hi, GI Crew. This is from Ian from Chicago. Hi, GI Crew. I'm a relatively new listener, but really love the podcast. I have a question about game difficulty. I have a friend that always turns up difficulty, when able, on every game he plays. His theory is that he wants the challenge of a harder game. When playing a game for the first time, I always leave the difficulty on the default setting. I believe that the default setting is the way that developer wanted you to experience the game, hence why it's the default.
Go on.
Who is right? Do you normally turn up the difficulty when you play, or do you leave it set on default for the first playthrough? Thanks, and keep up the great work, Ian.
If it's a game I don't care about, going down to easy.
Yeah.
If I care about it, normal.
Example.
If I love it, Transformers, I started on easy. Bayonetta, I go easy.
Which
Check off the
Transformers?
line. Devastation.
Oh, but the point is that it's difficult.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
it's
the
both
point,
platinum
man. You
stuff. I
gotta
will lower
do
because
it.
I'm like,
You
I
gotta
just
do
want a
it.
content cruise. I want the
Sure.
story mode style thing.
How far in did you get?
Ben cares a lot about Transformers storytelling is the thing.
Yeah,
I think
clearly.
He needs to see that story.
I really
Energon or
like. I
something?
really like Fall of Cybertron, and so I was just trying to get that comparison in my mind between those two games. But then, if it's a game that I really
But did you
love-
play Fall of Cybertron on easy?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, yeah. But then, if it's a game I really love, like Metal Gear Solid 2, then I think the fun is going back and going to that super hard difficulty.
That's when
just so
you've
you
already
can-
played, right?
Yeah, for sure. Just for a replay, so you can maybe understand some more, or like get more immersed in it, or spend more time with the individual challenges.
Do you ever start a game like first time going in blind?
Never.
Hard.
Well,
But what
like
if they
amplitude,
say,
sure.
if you're super experienced with this type of gameplay, like, hey, if you're good at action games, you're good at shooters, play it on this one that's slightly harder than
I've never experienced that. But maybe music games is the example
yeah,
that I would use.
you don't go in and play on medium on Rock Band. do
No,
you?
no.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it depends on. I mean, generally, I'm on board with our letter writer here, right? Like the one of the things I like about games is seeing a developer's intent, right? It's one of the reasons I personally, when it's not for work, I don't play a lot of early access stuff because I don't feel like at that point I have the final developer's vision of their game yet. I don't know that it's locked in, and I like to play it when it is locked in, and to have that be the chief way that I remember it. And so, as a general rule, I do it on normal. But there's some games that I've played so much in a given genre that it would feel weird. Like it'd feel weird for me to start a Halo game, I think, playing cooperatively on normal difficulty.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because like every time I play one of those games, I have a buddy and we play co-op and we start on at least heroic.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's that, but I guess I don't totally get the idea of like getting more out of it by starting on the higher difficulty, because if anything, you're cheating yourself out of having it the original way and then stepping up to the harder difficulty.
Let's talk about like The Witcher, for example.
Okay.
And I'm trying to enter the mind space of like Ian's friend who says like, you're getting the most out of the game. It's going to push the systems to the max or whatever. The Witcher, you know, when you play it on a harder difficulty, you really have to pay attention to the systems, whether you like them or not. You really have to micromanage and pay attention and you know, min max the whole thing. And if you take that stuff away, you need to pay attention to it a little bit, but then you can kind of breeze through things that otherwise, like, I don't care about, like, you know, the crafting system as much because it's not feeding back into combat as much. But generally, I think I'm with Ben, Hanson.
Hello.
Where it depends on the game. An Uncharted game, I'm going to whip through on easier, or I've played a million Call of Duties at this point. If I'm going to play a really hard version of Call of Duty, I'll play online where I get killed more than single player. But otherwise, yeah, it's it really depends. But another interesting angle on it is that the default setting might not be the developer's vision. Like that might be just what tested best. Like where people found a comfortable medium on the default. The developer might have had it in mind to be super challenging.
At that point, though, you are doing some second guessing, right?
Right.
Like, I think you have to accept that whether it's the developer or the publisher, the people who've released the game are saying, like, the way to experience this game and have the most fun
Right.
is here.
For the common person. I think
This is what it's tuned for.
I think we hit on this a little bit. In the long run, I think that the surest way to go about this, unless it's something you're super familiar with, like Halo, play it on default, and then if it's good enough, it'll merit a replay of it itself. And then one way you might get more out of it is by bumping up the difficulty.
I think it was interesting that he asked who's right. I'm like, I don't know if anybody's right. I think
No.
games are fun. So if you have fun playing them on hard,
right. I think the writer needs to go to his friend, play this section of the podcast, and say, "You are wrong.
you are wrong.
We're not friends anymore."
I think where you're wrong is
Well, I don't know.
if you ratchet up the difficulty to the highest level every time and you say, I'm not having fun with this anymore, this is frustrating, and you refuse to notch it down just out of pride,
it's
you're
dumb.
doing it wrong.
So that's why Ian's 100% right.
But you could, if you scale it down to easy, just to be fair, like, and then you're like, well, this is so easy, and scoff at it, and you're like, I'm not going to play it now because
Right.
it's not challenging. Like, you could go the other way. I think it's less likely to happen that way, but.
I before we close the topic, I will say that like putting it straight up on easy on some games does seem to me like you're in the name of just seeing the story. Like it does seem like there's times that you're missing out on something there.
For
right?
sure.
Like,
But I consider it like we have a lot of games we have to get through for this job. I like to have some sampling in a lot of the popular games out there. And so maybe it's just a part of this job where I feel compelled, like I just need to blast through this so I understand some frame of reference in this game. So I'm going on easy. And I understand, you are missing out on some of the thrill. Like, but the discussions you're missing out on, at least for me, is like when people are like, oh, that one boss fight was such a pain in the ass. And then he used this tactic. I'm like, I hit him twice. I don't know.
I don't remember.
That's the only corner of that discussion that I feel left
There's
out on,
moments
you know?
that feel less significant to you when you play it on easy, I think.
For sure. My life is hollow. Move on.
The next one is from Joshua from Irvine, California. Hey, GI Podcast starts out by saying some very nice things. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Goes on to say, I've been really into the Souls series for a while and I've always had a hard time following the story, so I finally went. When Bloodborne was released, I opted to sit down with a journal and catalog the lore bits that From Software dishes out in various formats, be it cutscenes, item descriptions, or just my own interactions with the characters and world presented to me. I really tried to write down my own impressions of what was going on. This led to the world becoming more immersive, as I really had to think before putting pen to paper about what I had just experienced. This is Joshua's question. In today's age of in-game grimoires and codex that document everything for big open-world games and RPGs, do you ever find yourself with a pen and paper just to get your own sense of things? I know it with your review process, you probably take notes, but how about the games you're playing just for fun on your own time? Thanks, Joshua.
Yeah, I take notes on almost every game I play. I have a very dorky system in my phone.
Just to keep the story straight?
Story notes, just like things to remember. Like, oh, this game did this thing really smart. Yeah, so I'll always play with my phone out. Yeah.
wow. When I play games for fun, it is very purposefully as different as I can make it from my work game experience.
Right. I don't get to play games at work. I guess that's the difference.
That's true. I guess. Like for me, when I'm reviewing, I'm taking a lot of notes. I'm halting in the middle of important moments in the game where there's a flow of something cool happening and being like, okay, everybody hold your horses. I need to make a note about how cool this moment is, which of course ruins the moment in some ways, but that's the nature of the beast. And so when I play at home, I tend to make an effort to not have that and really let myself get carried away with the game experience that's in front of me.
And the popcorn in your mouth.
And more than that, as everyone knows, I don't have any interest in following the lore of any video games or writing things about it. Or
you just check Twitter and
all about
mute
music.
cutscenes. Yeah.
I don't know that I'm pulling out a pen and paper and writing about it in the moment that I'm playing.
Sure.
It's more like
it's all after the fact.
Yeah.
You write the fiction, your own like stories
But
about what
if
the
you-
characters did.
If you ever wanted to follow a story from any game series or developer for the first time through, you'd have like the way that they're talking about doing that with that Josh was talking about doing that with Bloodborne, and like that's pretty much what you got to do to keep it straight.
Sounds kind of
But
fun to just
it
focus
does.
purely on that.
That's another reason I wanted to point this out. Is like I want to try to understand Dark Souls 3's story better, or when I get to it, Demon Souls, and not have to have it just explained to me by Dan Tack or a YouTube video. And that's how I'm going to try to do it. Read all those. That is like the number one tip you could give to a Dark Souls player or something is like read those item descriptions, not just to find out what they do, but to get the story.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who sort of like talk with fondness of like, oh, remember Link to the Past? I remember like drawing the map, or like, you know, playing old games like adventure games, like writing down like codes and like writing down
Even
like,
Broken Age Act 2 forced you to do it.
I never had a fondness for that. I like playing the game, and if the game isn't have systems built into it that allow me to input the information I need there, it bugs me. Like even a simple like enter this code on like a Deus Ex game or something. Like if I have to like try to remember that code, if the game doesn't save that somewhere, like that just frustrates me.
Well, it's interesting
like
'cause
I'm just built the opposite way.
You love Metroidvania, so it's interesting. You don't keep a mental note then of like, oh, I got to go back to this
mental
area.
notes are
mental
different.
notes are completely
All right,
different.
sorry. By mental note, I mean writing it down. I mean the opposite of mental notes.
Scribble it on your forehead.
Yeah, no, I don't write it down. Like that's what the map is for. The map shows you where to go.
Okay, but there's little moments in games where it's like, oh, at some point I have to come back here, and it's not noted on the map.
I actually prefer when it's noted on the map.
Okay, right.
Like, yeah. So, like, for example, Axiom Verge this year, I love that game.
Yeah.
But there were points where, like, there were secrets there, and they weren't noted on the map. Mm-hmm. And if I had been the kind of person that wrote things down, like, it would have been very handy because I could have been like, come back here at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't like to do that. So it just frustrated me later on when I was like, oh, where was that secret?
Before we move on, Tim, fun fact about Irvine, which is where he's from. Apparently, Final Fantasy VIII was localized in Southern California. And so the character of Irvine, the sniper cowboy guy from Final Fantasy VIII, he was named after that town.
Oh, that's a nice little aside.
Oh.
This next email comes from Jordan from Eagan. I'm assuming that means Eagan, Minnesota. We have a lot of Minnesota listeners, which is cool.
And Egan from Final Fantasy XII. No, sorry.
Dear GI Show crew, is there something in your life that makes it difficult for you to do your work or play games? I've got ADHD, which means that unless I take meds, I have difficult time playing games for more than a couple hours at a time. Even games that I love. Thanks, folks, Jordan. So, I mean, I thought that was an interesting avenue just to kind of open up like little personal, things that exactly what he asked.
So he's not talking like kids or something. Like
No, I think it's more just like if you have like a personal.
Well, kids would be a thing like that, I think.
Sure, it's
right?
Open it up. Anything that just is like maybe something that you haven't always dealt with or that not everyone has to deal with when you're playing a game that can kind of hold you back a little bit.
I get nauseous really easily, so first-person shooters can sometimes be rough.
When was the
Are you
first
one of
game
those
you
people
noticed
who
that?
takes like Dramamine before?
I have, yeah. For Bioshock Infinite, I was popping Dramamine. But it always made me drowsy. Even though it was labeled non-drowsy, it would always knock me
It's just
out.
less drowsy.
Yeah, it was Time Splitters. I love those games, but man, they destroyed me. And then like Metroid Prime was devastating, like cold sweats, like just trying to get
Really?
through that game because I loved it so
Holy
much.
crap.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
that's crazy.
Mine is my dog. And I mean that literally. I don't mean like generally like, oh yeah, my dog takes my attention away from games. I mean my dog gets ticked off at me and like I'm playing a game and she will come and she does this thing where she takes a tennis ball and she knocks it underneath of the sofa and then whines at it.
Can't you just
until I
lock
get
the
it.
living room?
I like spending time with my dog.
Ugh.
I like it that she's there.
And
My
the-
other dog comes and just
Ben
sits
doesn't like
on
that.
the sofa with me, which is
Yeah.
nice. And he actually will watch the game. He's a good game buddy. The other one, though, much as I love her, she literally has this game that she plays because she knows that at some point I can't handle it anymore. I can't handle her just being down there staring at the ball underneath the sofa. And so I have to like put down the controller, get down on my hands and knees, dig the ball out from like way far underneath the sofa.
buried in the popcorn kernels.
And honestly, it genuinely like interrupts my gameplay.
And then a game like Destiny that you can't pause.
I know.
I was
It's the
I was
worst.
at the end of the Taken King, just like doing my like the orcs fight,
Yeah.
and just like, well, I gotta pee. I have to go to the bathroom right now. Like, I guess that's never happening.
That's
again.
not gonna happen.
I have to eat some deaths.
Yeah.
Ben, you
Wear a
got anything?
diaper. I've been racking my brain. I don't know if I can come up with anything that's good.
I'll buy you some time.
Adult life, like I feel just busy sometimes, and I don't have time to play games sometimes.
Sure, but like in the moment, something.
But like
just
in the
pulling you
moment,
away.
I don't know.
I mean, your phone is just a thing where it's just
I
like
guess,
I
yeah.
find myself last night
Do
on
you,
the phone.
do you stop? That's actually a question. Then do you like? I if my phone's there, I don't mess with it.
That's
while I'm
awesome.
Playing games.
I usually don't, but if there's downtime, there's a loading screen, I just find myself like I just grab my phone and it's like the stupid going into a room that you don't remember why you went into that room, and you're standing there like staring around the room being like, why am I here again? Like, honestly, there's a couple times throughout the day I just boot up my phone. I'm like, what did I possibly need to do with this thing? And like more, I'm trying to get into the habit of just like throwing it in another room when I go to play games. Then you think of something you want to tweet, and then you go back in there. But for me, it's kind of similar to Miller. Like, pets are a thing that interrupt playing games sometimes. I had some cats when I lived with like multiple cats in the same house, like a ton of cats.
You still live with multiple cats.
I do. For something about Nintendo, like charging cables just got you through that. So your gamepad just like, well, that's dead. You know, the gamepad lasts like 2.5 hours anyway. They would chew through that.
My cat's like the Apple's cords, like the
yeah,
iPhone
mine
cord.
too.
I don't know what it
must
is
be
about
something
those.
with the rubber, like texture or
I
something.
don't know what it is about that.
I don't know.
That's the only cord they like to chew.
Right. That's one with me. Otherwise, I got carpal tunnel syndrome, so playing too much like Rock Band or Guitar Hero or something, that will do it. That'll flare up. It depends. My wrist started to hurt when I'd play too much Street Fighter as well. So that's just personal moderation.
Are you okay?
At a certain point too. Can we take a break?
Yeah.
I will say he mentioned ADHD. And
Okay.
like, I kind of feel that way sometimes. Just like I will zone out in the middle of cutscenes sometimes.
Do you have
and be
ADHD
like,
though?
What's the next question?
Okay.
But sometimes I don't even know what I was going to say anymore. You interrupted me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, see, it's that bad.
Well, it's
But I wish there was like a rewind button actually for cutscenes.
sure.
Every game
think
should have
that
a
would be-
rewind
I think
function.
that'd be kind of nice. Don't you think?
Sure, why
Because
not?
be
might
like,
use
wait,
that.
oh crap, what was that thing you
Yeah.
just said? Like,
So we're going to take a sidestep. This is Will who writes in, and he's got a correction on a correction on an email that was trying to expand something about the Fulton delivery system, or Fulton recovery system. Sorry. All right. So Will says that the person who wrote in before stated that the system had been around since the 90s. I don't think we said that. I think we said the correct decade, but and that it killed any person that tried to use it. This information is totally wrong. The system, properly named the Fulton Surface-to-Air Recovery System, was developed in the early 50s, and in 58, the first human test was conducted, which was a success. It was in active service from 1965 to 1996. There was only one fatal accident that occurred in the 80s. And so Will just wanted to offer some corrections.
So everyone tried at home.
Yeah,
cool.
get a balloon
Very cool.
and
Please.
send your brother or sister up into the clouds.
Yes.
Or your pets.
Please do. How are we doing on time? Do we
Maybe two more?
2 more? Okay. This one's from Jake. He asks, which game or games that could be considered a knockoff or copycat do or did you find yourself liking and playing more than their mainstream influence? A couple for him that Jake brings up is like he liked Zool as a side-scrolling platformer over Sonic, and Sunset Riders, side-scrolling shoot 'em up from the arcades over Contra.
Correct. Man, I was thinking about this. I have never gotten into the Gears of War games, but I really like Space Marine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Warhammer 40K game, which was everyone's just like, oh, it's the Gears of War wannabe, but like it was surprisingly solid. And like I'm not a big gore guy, but using the chainsaw in that game, like really, really satisfying. I really was impressed by that game. I feel like it went under the radar in 2011 or whenever it came out.
Did.
Check it out, everybody.
Yeah.
Go find a copy of
Sounds
Space
great.
Marine. Good luck, everyone.
You can do it. Does anything stand out to you guys?
I would say Sonic the Hedgehog. Does that count as a Mario ripoff?
No.
I don't even know if I would count that as liking it more. The one, so that doesn't answer the question at all.
That's a double. I hate Sonic.
But well, not hate, but just compared to Mario, right?
Okay.
I would say 50 Cent game, Bulletproof.
Oh, for the Gears of War?
I was thinking of Gears of War. I'm like,
Sure.
maybe kind of like I like that game a lot. It's a lot of fun, especially co-op. You can just like mow down dudes, and it has a silly story and.
Most some dudes.
I think
fun.
of like Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit instead of like the Puyo Puyo games. And that it was just like, oh, I needed the little bit of like the Sonic pull to introduce me to an awesome like versus puzzle game.
You know what that made me think of is actually Columns on the
Ooh, yeah.
Genesis.
Yeah.
You ever play that?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
actually think I genuinely like that better than Tetris.
What?
Yeah.
Now you're insane.
I know.
I love
now
Columns
you've
as a
gone
kid,
and done
but
it.
Get out.
Get the hell out of here. That same line, like Bejeweled ripoffs, like I would say, like
That's what I was gonna say.
All the like Marvel Puzzle Quest type
Yeah.
stuff that they've done. Puzzle Quest in
Is
general.
here's a question for you: Is Bejeweled really where that came from?
No, I think they ripped it off for sure.
From where?
I know. I remember seeing.
I
it.
feel like I know that that's true as well,
Yeah.
but I really don't know it.
I remember
don't know
seeing
where
an
it would
article
be.
about it, like
Okay.
about like the origins of that thing, and it was, but no one can remember the name of it. I think it was probably some Flash nonsense, you know.
Okay. Because like I would say I don't really love Bejeweled, but I play a lot of Match 3 games
Okay.
that I like a lot.
I know you're a big fan of Build a Boat. You just went through that.
I like Build a Boat. Yeah,
that's
you
fun.
must build a boat. I like Puzzle Quest games. There's a bunch of those kinds of titles.
That's
that
a decent example. A weird one I thought of. Some people might consider it a ripoff or a knockoff. Is BioShock 2 over BioShock 1.
you're a
I think
big
there's.
defender of
I
two.
like honestly, moment for moment gameplay. Like BioShock 2 is my favorite in the series for actual mechanics and fights and stuff
Really?
like that.
There's a good game club
Story
thing.
wise,
Is it? Is it a good game club game?
I don't know. Sure.
Yeah. We were thinking
story
Deadly.
wise, would you put it up there?
No, not as much.
But as
Definitely
a complete, so as a complete package, though, you're saying
I
that's
got the most enjoyment pound for pound out of
Interesting.
BioShock 2, and I understand that makes me a crazy outlier. I'm not saying that it's way outlying the other ones, just a little bit. I liked it a little bit more. I played
I
it
think
twice in a row.
people bag on that game more than it deserves.
I
I'll
agree.
agree with you
Yeah.
on that. I don't know if I'll say best in the series, but
Last one comes from Ryan here. Since you guys have seen a lot of, since you guys get to see a lot of games still in development, I was wondering what memorable games you have seen that you knew were something special long before they were available to the public, and what's it like trying to convey that feeling to those who can only take you on your word, Ryan? And we were talking a little bit before this, and I was thinking about this as I read it. Like, well, actually, that's basically our job is trying to use our words and like
every day.
take our word for it. This looks really cool.
Yeah.
But I thought it opened up a cool opportunity for us to talk about like games that we saw coming from like long before anyone else did. They're like, this is going to be cool, and it ended up being really cool.
It's always that moment when you get back in the office the day after a cover story trip, and people are like, "Oh, how's the game?" And it's like, just that level of enthusiasm says it all. Sometimes it's like, "Holy crap, there was this
Yeah.
one moment, and then this happened, and the team's crazy because of this."
yeah.
I'm trying to think specifically, like, I don't know, Miller and I saw Skyrim. That was my first cover story trip, so maybe I'm a
But
little.
Skyrim
going into that, though,
you
you
knew
knew.
though, right?
I guess so.
Kind of know. For me, the biggest one for me would be the original Assassin's Creed,
Oh, interesting.
because
Okay.
I was like one of the first people outside of Ubisoft or so they claimed that they had shown that game to.
Yeah.
And we. And back then we didn't have big cover story trips, right? We would send a writer. Mm-hmm. And so off I go to Ubisoft Montreal, and I really didn't know very much about the game other than it was called Assassin's Creed, and it was somehow kind of set in the Middle Ages. And then they showed it to me, and they showed me all the crazy like free climbing stuff, which of course now I'm like, oh, big deal. You can climb around on buildings and stuff. But if you can cast your mind back to 2007, the idea that you could go into this big medieval city of like Jerusalem and just climb over whatever buildings you wanted to, and then jump off into the street, and there were like crowds milling around. It was totally wild.
Yeah.
Not only that, but when I was there, Patrice was still on staff, and there's been lots of chronicling in the years since of the falling out between him and Ubisoft.
He was creative director. Is that
Yeah.
De La
And
Sette's,
it was
is
pretty
that-
much like his baby, right? And at one point, because it wasn't the media giant that it is today, he just sat me down in a room and was like, okay, let me tell you about Assassin's Creed. And just ran down like all these huge plans for the franchise.
Go on.
And it was so cool.
How far did he have it mapped out?
Oh, he had it mapped out for like multiple entries. And of course, our story that we were there to do was on the first Assassin's Creed game, and anything else was firmly out of bounds of
just like off the
like,
record?
was off the record conversation, exactly. But he just wanted me to kind of like understand, like, yeah, you know, that we have this longer term plan for this series, and I came away from that trip just being like, this sounds so amazing, because he was like outlining all this stuff about the present day stuff, which again, in retrospect, we're all sort of like old hat. Whatever, there's a guy in the present. But at the time, we didn't know about that, right?
Yeah.
We
They didn't know
understand.
about that until like the game released, right?
Well, we mentioned it in
we
the
knew
cover
it.
story, just briefly.
Okay.
But we'd agreed to have the on the record part be relatively limited of what we communicated about that stuff. And
I'm assuming that's one of those, that narrative framing device. You know, the game by itself would have been really cool, but then that narrative framing device is just like,
kind of knocked it out of the park.
oh, like this could take place in the 1920s during Prohibition if you wanted it to, or something.
And
you
that
know?
was exactly the thing, is that you had immediately after having visited and seen not only this gameplay system that was really sophisticated for its day, in terms of the parkour and the climbing and all that kind of stuff, but also to get the immensity of the potential for that franchise to, like, we can go anywhere and anytime and just have these like playgrounds made me really excited. And honestly, my enthusiasm for that franchise in the years since is rooted in those couple of days that I was up there talking to those guys.
That. Well, on a related note, then I remember on the Assassin's Creed 3 cover story trip. That was before that game was announced, and I remember we saw the big demo, and like the entire team watched it. It was like the first time they'd seen basically the vertical slice of that game, and like seeing Connor run through the trees alone.
Yeah,
like it was very impressive.
Yep.
And I remember Miller afterwards, or it's like when we were out to dinner or something. I remember you saying like, "There's a chance this game could be amazing, like game-changing amazing." And however you feel about how that game came out, like the first demo was really, really impressive.
That game, as far as Assassin's Creed games go, like that enthusiasm was at like a fever pitch for when the series just started to like
that was sort of the tipping point for that series,
you know, say what you will, where was it Revelations went, and some people say it started to drop off.
But it was definitely like a new thing, right? Like you had the opening game with AC1, and then this sort of 3-game series, the Ezio stuff that had happened, and it had kind of like, I certainly not fallen into a rut, but it stayed in that one era for a while.
Right.
And so when nobody knew what was going on with AC3, and getting to find out about all this crazy, like, we're going to be in America and you're playing this Native American guy, and it was really exciting at the time.
Yeah.
That does sound cool.
Ben, you have one?
Yeah. It's cover story pitch. People come to the office and like show us cover story pitches a lot of times before the game's out. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but it was a game that, I don't know, it was early in the Xbox 360 sort of generation like life cycle, and it was EA, and they're like, we're gonna come show you guys this horror game, and I was like, I don't know, EA's okay. Like, I'm never like
EA,
super
more like,
excited
okay.
for EA games.
Is this a game that came out?
And it is a game that came out, and so we go into the studio, and I'm like, I don't know if I trust EA with a horror game. But then they started showing us the intro to Dead Space.
Okay.
And it was like the scene where you just like come out and like you have the asteroids, and then they're showing us the stuff with the plasma cutter, and it flips, and you can cut off necromorph's limbs, and you're like, this game actually looks really cool.
Also, for a game that was inspired by Resident Evil 4, you can move and shoot.
And EA still isn't really the type of studio that does like super horror games, super mature games a lot of the time. So this was like a big deal.
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
that's the first time I've thought about that game.
I think Dead Space still sort of stands out as one of the best games that EA's done in the last like 10 years. So
I would agree.
I was like, this game's awesome. And then I got to go on the cover story for the second one, which was a real treat, and still one of the most exciting like demos I feel like I got during a cover story trip.
What slice did they show for Dead Space 2?
It was kind of actually a hodgepodge of different things, but you know where you enter the chapel? Yeah. And you have that beast that comes down? It was that, but it was coupled with the thing where you're in an elevator.
Okay.
And
I should go back and read that, actually. That'd be interesting.
It'd be interesting to go back. It is always interesting to go back and kind of read stuff. I also remember they came and showed us Bioshock Infinite.
Yeah, I
don't know if you remember that, Miller. Yeah. Were you guys around for that?
Yeah.
I think everybody sort of like piled into that conference room because they're like, we want to see this game.
It was a lot of that stuff that they didn't end up going with in the long run, but it still looked really cool. For me, I remember from like the word go, I was so interested in how Naughty Dog was rolling out the sort of cordyceps stuff and just showing like the mushroom blooming out of the ant's head during like the VGAs or something. I was like, people are already finding out like Planet Earth stuff and just like, oh my God, like, is this Naughty Dog doing like sort of a post-apocalyptic thing? Like, what's going on here? And then like didn't learn that much more, but then we started going to we went on the cover story trip. I went up to Naughty Dog and met like Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley and like saw more of the game, and they're talking about their inspiration. I was seeing the subtlety of the acting and like the way they realized this world, and I walked away from that cover story trip being like, guys, I think like this is a game I didn't know that I wanted for a long time, but like this is absolutely the type of game I wanted. The tone, the importance of the survival and the gameplay, these characters, the world they made, like I just was like, this is going to be absolutely it.
I remember walking by the Santa Monica Pier with you and Brian and just speculating about how the game was going to do and what the story was going to be like. And it just got us so excited, especially like what got me is just a big talking point in that cover story trip was Neil talking about how inspirational No Country for Old Men was.
Right.
And it's like for a game to like be based off the tone of No Country for Old Men, like
absence,
what the hell?
the absence of music,
which in fairness, it totally is.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Works.
Like at the end of the day, that like when you play that, you think, wow, this is a lot like No Country for Old Men.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I
But the
actu-
demo was it was the ambush sequence when they lose the car.
Yes.
When it starts out them driving.
the hunters sort of ambush them, and they crash into like a pharmacy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually just thought of another perfect example. It was back when IDOS came to pitch us Batman Arkham Asylum,
Oh,
the
sure.
first one.
Yeah,
And it was like,
I almost brought that one up
if
too.
you can remember Batman games before Arkham Asylum, and
can't.
just like the state that it was a joke, and
Imagine you're just like, okay, yeah, let's see this new Batman.
and nobody. I don't even know if we knew it was a Batman game when they came in. It was like they just want to pitch you on a game, and like Brian took the appointment, and then like Andy happened to be out of the office or something, and so Brian
a bunch of
basically
us
went
in
around and
there.
was like, "Hey, can you come check out this game?" And a lot of us were like, "Man, I don't have time to look at some dumb Batman game." But then we went in, and it was like the whole intro sequence where you cart Joker into the asylum, and you have the asylum stuff, and you're like, "Oh, this is actually really awesome looking. We should do this cover story." But Andy was out, and so we had to like basically. I remember me and Brian and Reiner sort of trying to convince Andy to put Batman Arkham Asylum on the cover, and he just was like totally not.
well,
trusting
three
us.
Batman
it was,
fans.
It was okay. Here, it was also that it was a big risk, right?
Oh,
because
totally.
not only was it Batman, but the studio. I mean, you say Rocksteady now, and you're like, well, that's one of the best studios out there making games. That was not the case.
The Urban Chaos developers?
yeah, exactly. I mean, you weren't exactly like jumping all over yourself to like sign up the next game from those guys.
Right. And I'm sure Andy was just thinking like, oh, these Batman goons, like
Yeah.
they see that caped cowl, they're on board for it no matter what the game is. Yeah.
yeah. It's that's awesome. I actually hadn't heard that story.
I think they actually had to come out a second time to show
think
Andy
they
the
did,
game
yeah.
to finally convince him, and then you're like, "All right, yeah."
Like the big double take from GI, just like
Yeah.
well, anyway, as far as a lot of great emails, please keep them coming. If you've been reserving a question, you're like, I don't know if that's going to quite make it. Please just pop open your browser, send us an email.
Or silly comments.
Or silly comments, whatever. Notice the things you noticed, corrections you want to make, whatever. The email of the week is going to go to Ryan, who was the guy who asked us just this previous email.
Perfect choice.
Really liked it, and we'll send you a little special something. Again, those questions in the email should go to podcast@gameinformer.com. We asked a few weeks ago for people to help us update and get us some fresh reviews on iTunes, since God bless him, Matt Helgeson ran a great show, but a lot of the reviews are for the old format of the Game Informer show. And we've gotten some really good positive feedback that's a little bit more about the updated show. This one comes from Von Snuggles. The 5-star review is like tasty, tasty pizza. You know when you get a craving for pizza and it's all you can think about? You work all day thinking about that cheesy, saucy goodness, and you can't wait to devour the whole pie. You finally get a pizza in front of you and grab the first slice and shove it in your pizza hole. I think that means mouth. The taste is magic and everything is right with the world. You know that feeling? That's the feeling I get when I listen to the podcast. It's like pizza in your mouth, except it's a video game in your ears. It's video games in your ears. What a time to be alive, Von Snuggles. Thank you.
Thought that was an
my
ad
favorite
for pizza
podcast,
for a minute.
Batgirl 1970. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about the new format, but I've come to love it. This is my favorite podcast, and I've even caught an episode on YouTube. We have a video version of the podcast
Check
on
it
YouTube,
out.
everybody. To be honest, no one looks that way. I pictured them in my head. No.
We all look
Not that
different.
that's a bad thing, but you hear a voice and you create a person with it, yada, yada.
I like
Thank
that
you.
idea because I am guilty of that myself, where I'll listen to people on the podcast forever and then I'll finally see them in person. It's like, what? Just trying to realign
I
everything?
think it's weird how many people don't know that we are all 9-year-old girls.
That's true.
That is shocking.
It's weird that, I mean, you'd think they'd pick up on that, but they don't.
Yeah. But I like the idea also of like people that just listen through the iTunes feed of like the old Game Informer show and the new Game Informer show and all that stuff, and they never really visit our site where there are videos with us on them. So then like having the podcast be that bridge to seeing us
That
for the
is
first time on the
interesting.
video happens.
Just to round these out, the reason we're reading this is like, yeah, if you give us a nice review, pop a 5-star review on iTunes after you subscribe, and then we'll read it, say your name, and like
It's hot bribery.
trying to give it, create a loop. An excellent
bribe
podcast.
loop.
An excellent podcast, not involving cows. This is from Darth Fats. Basically talks about how he thinks we're witty, intelligent, informative,
Oh
and then
my gosh.
talks about how he wants more farm reporting on it, which is funny. Another great review. It just says great. This is from Future Do. I love the old format, but the new format is fantastic as well. Zombie Killer 1313, 4 out of 5 star review.
Oh, I like it.
This is fair. We would prefer 5-star reviews, but this one points out that he wishes we could go a little bit shorter. Even though this is a long episode, we do keep that in mind every week, and we're trying like hell.
He says, I liked it because he had a note in there where he says, "You're not Giant Bomb. You can't go that long," which I really appreciate as a Giant Bomb fan.
Well,
But-
they go long in a way
really
that
long.
only Giant Bomb can get away with.
Yeah, and I always feel like I need to defend the length. I understand this is a long episode. I'm sorry. Don't look at the timer.
Let's
right
just
now
balloon
on
it
your
up by
phone.
talking about the length of it.
Yeah, let's
It's actually
extend
going
it
to get
now.
longer because you got an
want
interview
to.
here, don't you?
I really want to talk about it. But it's interesting to me because like the first hour is still new games, which is exactly how it used to be. And I just imagined like if people wanted to tune out then, that's fine. If you're not interested in party game design, you don't want to stick around for the Jackbox interview, that's fine.
Don't listen to it.
But well, I won't
If
say
you
that
don't
part.
want to, what I'm
Yeah.
saying is like if you don't want the extra stuff,
Yeah.
don't look at that length of time as a chore.
Stop
But-
listening to us.
But the catch, and what I didn't appreciate, is the amount of people that feel a certain sense of completionism with podcasts.
Sure.
If they start it, they want to finish it. And so I'm sympathetic towards that.
Yeah.
And so we're always trying to keep it under 2 hours
We
with
are.
the interviews.
We are.
We're sorry for this episode.
But in the interest of that,
Are we over
again,
2 hours?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Again,
All right.
podcast@game4.com for emails. Please subscribe on iTunes, tell a friend, leave us a 5-star review, all that stuff. But we have more fun show here if you choose to listen to it, which is the Jackbox team with Jackbox Party Pack 2. Some cool stuff in there, and you should absolutely stay tuned for that interview. But yeah,
Yeah, here's Arnie and Evan from Jackbox. Enjoy the interview. And welcome to the second half of the Game Informer show. We're joined by a couple of lovely gentlemen from Jackbox down in Illinois.
Yeah, Chicago.
Beautiful Chicago. All right, we got Arnie, who's the writer and director down at Jackbox. Hello, Arnie.
Hi.
And then we have Evan Jacover, the VP of Engineering.
Yeah, close enough.
All right, how would you pronounce that?
Jacover.
Jacover. God, I should have been better about
It's all
that.
about the emphasis.
You got it. So you guys are responsible for the Jackbox Party Pack, which is coming out next week. It is the sequel to last year's release of the Jackbox Party Pack, which Tim and I are huge fans of.
we've played that thing into the dirt.
You need a new one.
Yes, it seems like it's good timing.
That's right. It's like an Apple iPhone release. Like just when you get through all the jokes in Drawful and Fibbage, then like the new wave comes around.
Yep.
And that's what this one's really good for. So you guys maybe want to like set up what's going on in the sequel for Jackbox Party Pack?
Sure.
Yeah, we basically we were excited about just doing a lot of games, seeing how many games we can do and jam into one pack, and we just wanted to sort of do that again. But we didn't want to just do sequels to every game in the pack. We really wanted to look at like what game content wise really felt like people needed new content the fastest. So that's why we sort of anchored it with Fibbage 2, because people seem the most hungry for more Fibbage content. It's not as replayable as some of the other games. And then around that, we just wanted to have how many different weird kind of games we could throw in there.
Are you guys always set for like 5 games within a party pack, or think it's going to fluctuate in the future?
It could fluctuate in the future, but 5 is a lot of games to make every year. So, we'd love to do. We have plenty of game ideas. It's kind of just whether or not we have enough time to get them all done and in a form we like. So 5 seems to be a sweet spot for us. I'm hoping we never go less than 5, although I guess that's a possibility. But we don't know. Is the short answer.
Yeah.
Can you give us just like the quick rundown on which games are in the second party pack?
Sure. So we have Fibbage 2, and then which I'm assuming your audience has played Fibbage since it was in the first party pack.
I hope so.
Fibbage 2 is a bluffing game, and like all of the games in the party pack, you use your phone as a controller. So that's kind of the running theme of the party pack. So all of the games, everyone's interacting with the big screen using their phone. Sorry, we just had something weird pop up. And then the second game is another game that has been released in some form, which is Quiplash, which we released via Kickstarter earlier this year. So we're adding Quiplash XL, which has a whole bunch of extra content as part of Party Pack 2. And then the last 3 games are all new ideas that we haven't released anywhere yet. So one of them is called Earwax. Earwax is a sound effect game. We're kind of somewhat known for our sound effects, especially from You Don't Know Jack, and our audio producer has just been collecting a crazy amount of sound effects over the years, and so it kind of made sense for us to. We were trying to figure out what could we do with sound effects, and that we tried a bunch of different things and came up with the Earwax. It works kind of like apples to apples in that each person is given a number of sound effects on their phone or controller, whatever they're using, and you have to pick a couple that you feel best match a category. And a category could be something like a terrible halftime show for a football game. And so you pick your sound effects, and then one person is the judge, and they choose which sound effects they think best represent that category.
It's really a beautiful canvas for the imagination. Like Tim and I played it a little bit this weekend, and like it's a weird premise for a game. And you think, well, how can a fart sound and a wind chime be funny? But then the mind will connect those dots so well with the topic that's originally at play that it really works wonders.
Well, it turns out like a slide whistle and like an disappointed audience or something combination is like a pretty potent response to a lot of things.
Yeah, or just doubling up on farts every single time is always
that's the
funny.
thing. The farts in Earwax remind me of like anyone that plays the Hitler card in Apples to Apples. Just like, well, farts are always the funniest in any context.
Farts always win.
Except it would be like if there were 30 Hitler cards in Apples to Apples, and they were all slightly different Hitlers.
I wanted to ask you guys, with Earwax specifically, is it purely random, or does it cater some of those sound effect suggestions based on what the prompt is?
Well, wouldn't we be cool if we were like, no, it actually knows what you're thinking, but it really is random. I shouldn't say that. It's not purely random. It tries not to give you sound effects that will totally overlap with each other, so you should never end up with, all farts or, all doorbells or
That'd
whatever.
be overpowered.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. It does something really smart, which I don't think I remember being in Jackbox Party Pack 1, but tell me if I'm wrong here. But with Earwax is the first time we noticed it, where it'll actually call out somebody specifically based on their name.
Yeah.
So like we're playing with somebody named Emma, and like the prompt was like Emma's morning routine.
Or Emma's Facebook status update or something like that.
Right. Is that something new you guys are doing, or did we just miss it last time around?
It was in Drawful. That was something that we came up with in Drawful, but it was very hidden. It was like an Easter egg to kind of blow people's minds. So there are probably about 4 or 5 prompts in Drawful that included a player's name. So when you were playing, you'd see the horrible drawing, and then you'd see all the different, possibilities for what it could really be, and you'd be like, well, it's definitely not Evan is the worst.
Right.
There's no way that the game knows that Evan is playing.
Or that he's the worst.
And, people are really, first they're scared when it comes, they're like, how did the game do that?
Yeah. It's really good. You guys really are great at enabling people to lie to, screw over, and embarrass your friends. It's really good.
Also, we want to destroy as many friendships as possible. That's really our...
We'll have like a McDonald's sign outside.
I cannot count the
million friendships ruined.
The great thing about people playing these games over like Twitch and various different streaming devices is that we can watch people playing the games. And I've seen a couple of streamers like have that moment of discovering that their name is in the game and being really mystified or really confused. And some of the streamers are maybe a little more famous. So for a second, they're like, oh, am I famous enough that my name is a prompt in this game? And then realizing that the game just did that.
Yeah.
You guys are so brilliant in a number of ways. Let me just kiss your ass a little bit. But the most amazing thing that happens all the time when you're playing a Jackbox game is there's a prompt that comes up, and your mind will click into, well, there's no possible way that's the answer, or like that is the actual fact. There's no way the Jackbox guys could be that specific or that funny with their answer, and more often than not, it is you guys.
Thank you.
I think that's something that Drawful, we're talking about a game that's not in Party Pack 2. We're terrible.
That's fine. It's
selling this game, but I think that's something that game did very well in that it was just the content was so insane. And well, maybe this is a good segue to talk about Bidiots, which I also think does
Oh yeah.
that very well. Like a lot of the prompts in Bidiots are so insane, and also very similar to each other. Well, why don't you explain Bidiots?
With Drawful, I wrote. I mean, since we're making so many games, everyone does a lot of different stuff. But I wrote most of the prompts for the first Drawful game, and it was kind of a descent into insanity, basically, like just writing thousands of things. And as I went on, they just started getting weirder and weirder. And really, the philosophy that I came up with was, I want it to be impossible for you to know what the voice of the game is.
Right.
To think that like, oh, this is written grammatically correct or something like that. Like writing them weird in as many different ways as possible. So you would always think that that's probably not the right answer because it's too weird, or even a couple of them are spelled wrong on purpose.
Oh, that's so smart.
That's good.
Just so that, later in the game, you always in the back of your head are thinking, I guess this could possibly be the right answer, no matter how weird it is. So then with Bidiots, which is one of the new games, it's like an auction game where you draw crazy things and then everyone, bids on each other's drawings in the auction. Again, there are a lot of just really weird things to draw because I just think it's really funny to fail to draw something.
That's the overall throw of it. So do you see Bidiots as like a spiritual successor to Drawful?
I would say, it's got some Drawful DNA in it. It's not real, I've seen online a few people refer to it as essentially Drawful 2. It's definitely not that. I mean, there will eventually be another Drawful, but it definitely has that, like, craziness in what the things that you're drawing are, but it's got a little bit more of a twist to it where everyone is drawing sort of things that are similar in a way that's kind of dastardly. Like, so you're trying to figure out if this is, moon shoes or glowing shoes or radioactive shoes, like all these things that like you try to put as much detail into it as possible. And you're probably just making it more and more confusing.
Yeah. So you want to get into maybe some of the strategy of Bidiots? Like it seems like one of the more complex you guys have shoved in, one of the more complex games you guys have put in one of these party packs.
It's a little more cerebral than some of the other games. There's definitely more strategy. So I'm trying to think of the simplest way to describe it. The challenge of like designing the game was really kind of trying to explain to the players exactly what the strategy was. So basically, you draw two things. There'll be very different, weird things that you're drawing. Everyone's drawing similar versions of those things. You're also being delivered secret messages from art buyers that can't attend the auction, and of the art that they want to buy and what those pieces are worth. So you have to try to sort of suss out what painting you're looking at. Like, does it fit this title? Does it not fit this title? And is it worth, $3,000 or is it worth $700? And so everyone has different information in the room. So a lot of it becomes both guessing whether this is the right drawing, but also kind of reading other players' reactions to see if they know what this painting is worth, or if they're just trying to, screw you into buying something that isn't worth very much. Or the strategy that I use a lot, if it's my own drawing, I bid on it a lot to try to bid the art up as much as possible, because you get half of that money back when someone buys something you drew.
Smart.
Okay, so just convince everybody that it's worth $1 gazillion, and then they go all in.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good to be an aggressive bidder in that game. I think
so too.
Because when you're bidding, people think either you're trying to get something, or you're bidding up your own drawing, or you're fooling people into thinking you have a reason to bid it up. It's so the best thing to do is kind of walk that line and get the price up, and then lose the auction if it's a bad item.
And all throughout you're getting these messages, which is something we were excited with experimenting with, just getting secret messages on your phone. So you're getting these texts from these weird billionaires who want this art, and a lot of the times it's just little jokes or little awareness moments where it knows something that happened, but sometimes they're giving you advice like, Evan knows how much this painting is worth, or the most expensive painting is still out there. Sort of fun little things to try to see if you can get more information.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love just a little prompt saying like, "Oh, Tim knows more than he's letting on," stuff like that. So then it's like, all right, well let's look away from the TV screen for a while and really just start yelling at each other, which is the ultimate goal of all games.
Correct.
I think. Yeah, it's interesting to have bidiots in there, which seems like some of the more, if you want to call it, higher end strategy. But the range of this box also just has Quiplash, which is about as basic as it gets. Just there's two things on a screen. Which one's funnier? Go for it.
Yeah.
I really like Quiplash a lot. What's the strategy in releasing that one early? Or is that like a overall strategy with you guys? Because last time around you did it with Fibbage. Do you always want to trickle one game out early and then bundle that into the pack?
No, it's not. It's not really a strategy. We want to make, we want to do more than just have the Jackbox Party Pack. Ideally, we'd prefer not to release a game and then have that same game in the pack, because we know, it's some people have bought it and it's not ideal for them. But for Quiplash, we weren't even going to make Quiplash, and we did a Kickstarter for it. And it's just really fun. And we kind of wanted to give it as much exposure as we could, and it just seems silly not to put it in the Jackbox Party Pack. But that's, I wouldn't say that's going to be a trend for us, or that's something like we want to do, or we have some strategy around. It's really what would be the most fun 5 games for people to take home and play with their families over the holidays this year, and that's what we were trying to come up with.
Yeah, you guys lit my Christmas on fire last year with Drawful. Like, my family has never seen anything that entertaining in their lives. They did not stop talking about it for months. So congratulations.
Well, that's great. That's what we want to hear. We've been kind of surprised by how accessible all these games have been for, all sorts of different people, and people, we hear about people playing with their grandparents and all that stuff. And it's really, we couldn't be happier to see such a wide range of people playing.
Yeah, we really wanted to make the hurdles to playing as few as possible, which is why, some people are like, why isn't there an app? I wish there was an app instead of a website. But no one wants to download an app. I don't know. Downloading an app is the easiest thing in the world. But if you have friends over and you tell them to download an app, they're like, ugh.
100%.
I don't want to do that. But if you just have to go to a website and just put in a code, we find that it's really easy to play. Even my mom, who is so technology phobic, if
she won't be watching this on YouTube.
She won't be watching this on YouTube. But the way I usually explain it is, if you can use Facebook on your phone, you can play our games. So my mom knows how to type on Facebook on her phone, so she knows how to play our games.
Yeah. Evan, you want to talk about some of the challenges in developing that tech? Did you take an inspiration from somebody else that had done this before you? Because it's the first time I've encountered it, and it works so well.
Yeah, sure. So it actually came from, we kind of took a topsy-turvy route to get here. We made a game for the Ouya. We made a version of You Don't Know Jack called You Don't Know Jack Party. This was after we had been spending a lot of time making the Facebook version and mobile version of You Don't Know Jack. And we realized it wasn't it was fun and the content was great, but people were playing by themselves, and You Don't Know Jack was really meant to be played with a group of people in the same room. And so we wanted to find a way to do that. And so we're kind of looking at these newer boxes that were smaller and cheaper and kind of more likely for people to have in their house. Ouya at the time seemed like a likely candidate. And so we made You Don't Know Jack Party for that. And we were like, well, no one's going to buy 4 Ouya controllers to play this. So how can we let people play this game? And we had multiple people holding one controller. We tried all these things, and eventually we just decided to make an app. And so we made an Android and iOS app so that you could use as a controller. It was called Jackpad. And we kind of started to see all of these problems. You had to get on the same Wi-Fi network as everyone. You had to download the app, and all of these were just roadblocks to people playing the game, and made it really annoying. And so when we started working on Fibbage, which we knew we wanted to do, we realized we had to try something different. And room codes, I feel like some other people have done room codes in the past, just 4-letter codes, or you see it when you sync Netflix on your Xbox to your Netflix account, and it's just kind of an easy way to do things. It's not a new great idea, but it definitely seemed like an easy way for us to access this. And We knew that there was new technologies in browsers, and phones tended to have the latest versions of the browsers, which was nice.
Yeah.
So you weren't butting up against old browsers that would, not support the latest features. And so we were actually able to do, not to get too deep in the weeds, but real-time socket connections. So we could send messages, close to real time. There's still a bit of a lag because we're going through the internet, and that's probably one of the biggest issues we have to design around. Is we have to make sure all of our games aren't totally dependent on, when I buzz in, like it responds immediately. So all of our games kind of take that into account. You can submit an answer, and if it takes a second, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't affect the game. And that's something we're looking to improve. We've got some ideas to try to get that latency down, so we can do games that are more timing based. But in the meantime,
which is a challenge because traditionally, Jackbox Games and back when we were Jellyvision, like timing is like one of our most important. One of the things we're most interested in, and especially going back to Jack, it's always like bing, bing, boom, everything's happening really fast, and having to kind of slow that down was sort of difficult at first, but I don't know. We're kind of I'm starting to like it a little bit. Sort of maybe basically what it does is it gives space for the people in the room to kind of like be funny themselves together instead of sometimes being bombarded by the game that they're playing.
Yeah, definitely.
The Jack Attack's a good example of a question type that is hard to do with this technology because it's the first, as soon as you see the answer, you have to buzz in, and the first person to buzz in gets the points. So, we're trying to explore different ways we could do the Jack Attack. Like, maybe there's some other ways to look at that question type.
Yeah.
Right,
and it's kind of been a fun exploration.
Yeah, is there a future for You Don't Know Jack? Are you guys just the Party Pack studio now, or how do you see that split?
We're kind of looking at it as, building up kind of this portfolio of games that we can go back to and visit in different ways. And You Don't Know Jack is still very much a part of that. I think everyone here, well, I shouldn't speak for the writers who I know get burned out writing You Don't Know Jack questions because you guys
it's a lot of work writing a You Don't Know Jack question.
But I think as a game, we all love it and like just recognize what like a great, trivia game it is. So it's not gone. I think the more games we have, kind of the more time we could put into the next version of that game being something new and interesting and different, instead of just cranking out like You Don't Know Jack 2016 this year, and have it be pretty much the same as last year's. When we do a new You Don't Know Jack, we're hoping we'll be able to have some time to put some new thought into it.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned the other writers. Can you give us some insight into just what the office, like the studio, is like? Is it just people just constantly making jokes at each other and like a really funny atmosphere that way, or are people like going and sequestering themselves and they come back with just like this comedy gold?
We're pretty small. First of all, we're probably smaller than most people would guess. There's probably like 13, 14 people now.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It's if you can see past Regis Philbin,
I can't.
You can see pretty much the entirety of our office.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of people trying to make each other laugh, but like most offices, like there's a lot of just people really quietly and intensely working on stuff. From a writing perspective, there's a lot of just going away and really working hard to craft something that's really funny, but then there's also, a lot of brainstorming and sort of trying to make each other's ideas weirder, which I'm a big fan of. We have a lot of people that come from the Chicago improv community, so we're very like people that like to kind of collaborate and sort of bounce ideas off of each other. But since we do so many games now at the same time, we really do break off into smaller teams and we check in with each other, but it's kind of cool to be like, whoa, this weird prototype turned into a really weird game, like a full game.
Yeah,
which is a good setup for the weirdest game in the pack.
Oh yeah,
Bombcorp. Yeah,
Bombcorp.
Bombcorp is the weirdest game,
and it's my favorite.
Yeah, it's been Arnie and I worked a lot on this and together, which was fun. So Bombcorp is the fifth game in the pack, and it is a 1 to 4 player game. So unlike the other games that really have a big crowd, it's a smaller group of people. And the way it works is you are interns at a bomb manufacturing company that is not very good at making bombs. So they often just start going off. The timer starts ticking down on their own. And as an intern, you have to defuse the bombs. And also as an intern, sometimes you have to do some other work like filing or making coffee. And of course, if you file wrong, the filing cabinet explodes. And if you put the coffee wrong, the coffee maker also explodes. So there's all these different puzzles, and each person, the way it works is each person on their controller is given different information, and you have to share your information and take the right actions to solve the puzzle. So it's a lot of yelling and collaborating. And one of the fun things about it is actually very fun when you fail, because everything explodes and you have to try to figure out what went wrong, who made a mistake, how you screwed it up. So it's very bizarre, and I think one of my favorite things about it is it's kind of it's our first game that has kind of a story mode.
Yeah.
So as you progress through the game, there's this really ridiculous story about the interns, and the boss gets fired, and you get a new boss who I won't reveal, although the voice is someone in this room.
Oh,
Interesting.
it's definitely got like one of the most visually distinct styles of a lot of the Jackbox games.
Well,
I've
even like
played.
Earwax really stood out to me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the weird Game Boy aesthetic. You guys went with that. But the fact that, there's a story mode and actual characters in Bomb Corps seems so different for you guys.
Yeah, that's kind of a new thing. And the art, I think the art in all of these games is amazing. Neither of us are artists, so it's probably something we both get really excited about. It's one of my favorite moments in game development is when the temporary placeholder art gets replaced with what the artists have actually made, and all of a sudden it looks like an amazing game.
Yeah.
So I love that. So Bomb Corp is all 8-bit, really kind of chunky art, and it ends up being really funny because it's amazing what you could do with just a couple pixels.
Yeah, and it kind of ends up playing a little bit like Space Team, if people out there are familiar with that on iOS, where everyone's just screaming at each other directions. And then the brilliant part that we saw, at least playing a little bit this weekend, was when some directions will override other directions. When I'll say no matter what everybody else says, yours is correct.
Yeah.
This needs to supersede everything else.
So you better have a strong personality, otherwise you're gonna blow up.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, Space Team was a huge influence. I mean, we get to play a lot of games here and just kind of, see what game mechanics we like and what works. And we were actually lucky enough to have the developer of Space Team test Bomb Corp for us.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. It's
Take a look. So the community, the game development community has always been great. I mean, especially in Chicago, it's a pretty tight knit, small group, but really everywhere. Our worry is he's gonna be like, you guys totally ripped me off, But he liked the game and said it was a lot of fun. So
Nice. Since you guys are the masters of party games, are there some that really stand out to you that you'd want to give a shout out to that were not developed in your halls that have been big inspirations for you guys throughout the years?
Sure. We've been playing, so we have a contingent of Rocket League fanatics here.
Oh,
Of course.
And I'll say, we're big fans of iDarb and the way they have interaction from Twitter and the other community, and just how just totally insane that game is.
Yeah, the great thing about iDarb, we talk and think a lot about iDarb here because it's a game that feels like it was maybe in a small way influenced by us, but then we feel like we could take some influences back from them, just like all the sort of, I don't know, I love chaos in games, basically. I like to try to introduce as much chaos as possible, and I love how much chaos iDarb has, especially people in the Twitch stream or on Twitter just blowing the game up. I just think that's really fun.
I've been loving Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. That's been one of my favorite games. I like how it's cooperative, but you also kind of hate the person you're trying to cooperate with because you can't it kind of captures working together in a nutshell. There's these things group projects, I could do that myself, but then I need to do everything and you need to we need to work together, and it's frustrating, but I find it very satisfying and pretty.
Yeah, but we need to get to that. That's definitely one on my list. It's always God, when I have somebody over, I need to jump into that game. Finally.
I know games that I find inspiring, that I remember having played and that was sort of inspired by, I think, a lot of the old, early Double Fine games. I think about Psychonauts all the time as a game that is just legitimately funny, and not just sentence by sentence, but in its actual conception. The levels are so smart. There's a whole idea behind each level. Like, you know, you go into the anal retentive character's mind and it's this cube. And so it's not just a one-liner joke, like it's a joke that really is like a metaphor for a whole level. And I think that stuff is really fun. And so in designing these games, now it's sort of trying to find like a deeper way into building them.
So can we talk about the writing process a little bit more? I'm really curious, like, especially games like Fibbage, you need so many facts.
Yeah.
Where does that stuff come from?
Where do facts come from?
Yeah, please explain.
Yeah, that's tough. You know, Fibbage it takes a long time to write the content for Fibbage because, you know, you go on the internet and you just look for weird facts, or you just get a book of facts and you go through it and you go through pages and pages until you find something that's just really seems crazy enough and funny enough, and really like that blank that you take out gives enough opportunity for the players to be funny. And it's challenging. It's just a lot of digging and just a lot of research time spent trying to find that stuff. And the worst part is that like there are a lot of facts on the internet and a lot of really funny, weird facts on the internet, but a lot of them are not true. So you really just have to you just have to keep digging. You can't just like use those weird posters of facts at a urinal, you know, that are sometimes posted, you know, in the bathroom. Most of that stuff isn't true. And as a trivia writer, I've really come to like recognize all the time people tell me like, did you know this one thing? I was like, yeah, I heard that. It's not true.
Next level trivia is correcting the incorrect trivia. That's really good. Do you guys ever just go to like local bar trivia things and just tear it apart and just clean up to the point where you're correcting the guy leading the trivia?
Some people here do.
Okay.
We both are new fathers, so we have no time to go and do anything anymore, unfortunately. I know one of our writers is a huge Simpsons trivia guy. Like he goes and does Simpsons trivia every week, which is
What?
a little crazy.
How much is
every week? How much of your life do you want to dedicate to going and playing Simpsons trivia every week? But I actually, for my own sanity, I try to forget as many facts as I possibly can.
Smart cleanup.
There's a real danger of turning into Cliff Clavin, and I'm just spouting out facts that like nobody wants to know the answer to.
I especially love in the first Fibbage. I haven't seen any in Fibbage 2 yet, but I'm sure they're in there. Like the celebrity tweets and stuff, where it's just this completely run-of-the-mill tweet and trying to. Are you guys constantly just following everybody, or how do you find those random tweets in particular?
That's actually a really good question, because part of making that game work, and it was the same when we did Lie Swatter, which is full of lots of crazy facts, is you got to try to find new veins of information. You know, it's like you're mining for gold and you exhaust something, and it's like, well, what else can be a fact? And once we discovered, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of really crazy celebrities on Twitter. That's a great place to go and find stuff. So basically, when that happened, it's just like, well, who probably said something crazy? I bet Kanye West did. Let's go look at Kanye West's Twitter account. Or it's like, I bet Donald Trump did, and this was before he was running for president again. And it's like, let's go see what he has to say. You know, you just basically think of a Gary Busey. I'm sure Gary Busey's Twitter account is crazy. So you just, you spend a day thinking of celebrities that probably said crazy things, and then you just scroll, and you surprisingly don't have to go too far until you hit some gold with those.
God,
Gary Busey's Twitter is just pictures of redacted government.
it's perfect for Fibbage. Yeah. So you talk about how you like having dastardly things in there and twists that people wouldn't expect. Do you have some good examples from Jackbox Party Pack 1 or 2 of your favorite moments or your favorite answers or prompts that are just completely dicky?
I know one thing that I've seen that people really respond to is, what is it? I think there's a question about Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey's brother is a professional blank impersonator. And most people will answer that he's a Kevin Spacey impersonator.
Right.
And I think in reality, he's like a professional, I don't even remember, Johnny Carson impersonator or something like that. But so we went to great lengths. So if people would put in the same answer, it would still show each person, and it would say, this person answered, and this person answered, and this person answered, and the audio actually escalates with each one. So it's very rare that all 8 people put in the same answer, but there is audio that escalates for that, and the rare case that happens.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to see the rare occasion, videos online where people were 6 or 7 people put in the same answer, and just seeing people getting more excited and their mind being blown, like, oh my God, did everybody in the game put in the exact same answer? And that's really fun. It's worth the work. Like when you're doing it, you're like, this is a lot of work to make it so that this works, but it's worth it when it happens on those rare occasions.
Yeah. God, I remember in Drawful, one of the prompts was just nothing. And so you try and submit nothing, and then the prompt comes up with like an error message saying, you have to draw something. And it just catches people in this complete mind fuck of a situation where they don't know how to handle it.
Oh, yeah. They're weirder and weirder. Every time we would do a test, the prototype in the office for Drawful, and something strange would happen, I would think, well, that has to be a title. So so someone would draw a terrible drawing, and someone in the room would be like, I don't know, what is that? It's a house tree face gun, just to be funny. And I'm like, well, that should actually be a problem. And then some of them are really brutal. Like, one of them is just a bunch of just like gibberish letters. That's one of the prompts in Drawful 1. They're really. I would try to do something that would sort of describe an expression, but wouldn't be that expression. So I'm trying to think of a good example. So like lead a horse to water. Mm-hmm. I would prompts would be something like, look at that horse by the water. And so someone would draw that, and then maybe someone would be like, oh, that looks like lead a horse to water, and type that in. And when you're playing, you'd be like, well, obviously it has to be lead a horse to water, because that's the most sensible thing that's up there on the screen. But the real answer is, look at that horse by the water.
It's so
one of my favorite moments in Quiplash is there's a prompt that's the worst video game ever or something like that. I can't remember what it is exactly. And believe it or not, every prompt in Quiplash has, if you type in a particular response, there's a recording.
Oh, really?
Where the host will respond to you. And so if you type in Quiplash as the worst video game ever, or the worst game ever, maybe it would, then there is a lengthy response to that, which I won't ruin for you here, but it is quite vulgar.
That's awesome.
It's like the Mr. Rossetti of Animal Crossing. Just like, let me sit you down and explain why you're incorrect about that. That's great. So how do you guys... go for it.
We love to put in Easter eggs and just little stuff like that. Stuff that like is kind of crazy because doing 5 games is a lot of work. And then we just make a lot more work for ourselves. Like Bomb Corp is one that just has a lot of just little hidden dumb things. Even it's just like visual jokes in the background and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, we put a lot of time into that stuff. Some of it almost never gets seen. And some of it, lives on the internet when people find them.
Yeah.
I'll give you one that's in Bomb Corp, our artists. We have kind of an ongoing battle playing Donkey Kong here.
Okay.
And I have long since withdrawn from that. But there's a couple people who are constantly fighting for the high score on Donkey Kong. And one of them was the artist on Bomb Corp. And so in one of the conference rooms in the background on the whiteboard, it has like a high score list. And he put himself at the top of the high score list. A little inside joke.
That's awesome. I love it. It's interesting that with your games, I think we talk about like how funny you guys can be and how you can slip into the group, whoever's playing any sort of party environment so well. But I feel like the PG rating is always a tell. Like maybe it's just the group that we always play with. Maybe we get a little bit racy or raunchy, and it's always like, okay, well, we know that Jackbox isn't going to be too graphic with their imagery, or it's not going to have like swear words in it. Is that something you guys are committed to? Is it always PG level? How do you balance that?
I would say PG is probably not right, because we definitely, the bottom line is that we want to get a teen rating.
Right.
And so like, it doesn't really make sense for us to have a mature rated game, because it's not going to sell as well.
Yeah.
But we try to push the PG as much as we can. And it's so funny, like filling out the ESRB stuff is always a challenge for us to really, because it's like, well, there's a lot of weird, dumb jokes, but like they're asking about very literal things, like literally about violence and blood. And it's like, well, buckets of blood is a prompt and Drawful. So technically, do we have to put that? And actually, when we were going through the ESRB code, one of the questions is, are there poo coils in the game?
What?
Are there depictions of poo coils?
Like a pile of poo coiled up?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, there isn't, but I'm going to actually make that a prompt in Drawful now, because I just think that's really, it's like there is now.
I feel like it's an earwax character too now, right? Isn't one of them like a poo coil?
Oh,
In Bidiots.
In Bidiots now,
Bidiots,
where
that's
it's like,
what it
we've got to
is.
have another poo coil in this pack. So one of the paddles is shaped. It might be ice cream.
It's all backfired, a poopy backfire on the ESRB. Just like, oh, there's more poop. Damn it.
At the same time, like a lot of us are dads now, and like it's actually become something that's on our radar. And so, I mean, we hear it from our fans as well, but we want the games to be fun to play with a family. So we, in Jackbox Party Pack 2, most of the games have a family-friendly toggle. So what that does is it just eliminates any of the questionable questions or content. So those just won't show up when the family-friendly toggle is on.
Okay.
You can still type in the worst things you want.
Sure, that's
We
smart.
don't, but it kind of came up because in the first Fibbage we had a question about a dildo, and invariably whenever someone like was playing with their kid, the dildo question would come up. It was probably like the only one that was even like questionable. And so a lot of people were like, can't you just take that question out? And our response was, well, no, we don't want to take it out, but we should give you a way to not see it.
Yeah.
With you guys, being parents now, are there going to be some more, like, are some trivia questions going to be like, how long to heat up formula? What's the exact amount of time?
Wait, you have to heat that up?
Yeah, I don't know. You should freeze it, I think. I don't know.
I think that's how that
Popsicle.
works.
We're not good parents.
How do you guys brainstorm ideas for the games? Do you just have a big old whiteboard with like the top candidates and you just boil it down to, all right, we have to pick these 5 and let's just lock that in?
That's a great question. And it's kind of one of the most fun and also the most aggravating things we do here. We do have a big whiteboard and it gets erased and rewritten usually with the same things over and over again. But kind of our general process, and we change this all the time, is that people like kind of come up with ideas, and anyone here can come up with ideas and pitch them. Like there's kind of a bunch of different phases where you pitch them. Sometimes it's just like, well, what if we did this? Sometimes we try to make a paper and pencil version of the game, which is kind of how Bomb Corp started. And I think the Bidiots, which we always called the auction game because we didn't have a name for it for a long time. Those both started just as, handing everyone a slip of paper and someone, standing up and saying, okay, here's what you do, and kind of being the host. And we've done dozens of games like that. And sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're terrible. Sometimes they're great, but we can't quite figure out how to fit them, onto a console or make them a video game. So that's kind of the beginning of the process. And then we have our big whiteboard of all the ideas, as well as, when we start this process again, we'll look at ideas that didn't make it into Jackbox Party Pack 2 that maybe with some tweaking or, if we go back and revisit them, might be contenders to make a game in the future. And then we'll also go back and look at all of our released games and see if there's like, what would be a good sequel to do? What features can we add? So it's all kind of a big process of throwing ideas around. But my favorite part about it is that everyone who works here is involved in that, no matter what your job is.
Yeah, I know when I have an idea, I just or want to collab, like at the beginning of an idea and want to collaborate, I kind of find myself wandering around the office being like, who's most likely to be excited about this besides me? Who can I get on board with this? And so I'll just kind of casually pitch an idea to someone and they just don't seem into it. And I'll be like, all right, move on to the next person. And there's kind of a great sort of democratic quality to that. It's like, you've got to get people excited about this idea to kind of, and you can kind of hopefully can snowball. You get enough people excited about something to build a prototype and then maybe it'll make it in.
Yeah. And sometimes games that will probably never get made just become kind of legend here. We have one, you can bleep me if you want, but it's called Penis Maze. And
it's totally allowable in the Game Informer show. Please explain.
It's kind of just become this, it was really dumb, and the intention never. It had a drawing aspect to it, so everyone drew a peanut. Most people did. Anyway, and so it's kind of just become this game that's floated around that whenever we're like, well, what should we make next? Well, we better get started on Penis Maze.
Wait a minute.
It's funny, like, let's okay, everybody, let's write on the whiteboard what were the games that we were thinking about, and someone would be like, oh, auction, and someone will always just as straight face as possible. Penis Maze has to go up there.
Is that basically with people like drawing parts of a maze that you stitch together, or how would that work?
Honestly, I think as I remember it, it's mostly just like a test of a certain mechanic.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
There's not much of a game really to it.
Okay.
With a title like that, you don't need much of a game. You guys are like,
Exactly.
The game will fit the title.
Yeah.
instead of the other one.
it's just a bejeweled clone.
Yeah.
You get
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So what's the logic of bundling all the games together? Why not dole them out separately?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, the one that's probably most exciting to both of us, I'm guessing, is that it allows us to throw in some games that we wouldn't ever make otherwise.
Okay.
They could be a little more experimental, a little bit more of a niche game, and we don't since there's bigger games that we know already have a following. Maybe people buy the pack and maybe one of those other games will catch on, or maybe it will be terrible, but at least we tried something new. And when you're just releasing single games, you're kind of in this boom or bust mode where, like, if a game does great, great, and then you end up keep making that game over and over again. And if it does poorly, then you never go back or you get scared to try anything new. So by selling a pack of 5 games, we get to kind of experiment a little bit more. And I think that's good for the people who like our type of games, too. You're not just getting You Don't Know Jack over and over and over again. Who knows if we would have made Drawful if we didn't make a party pack,
Right.
And so games like that kind of can have a life of their own.
Gotcha. This is just
A lot of some of the philosophy. I think one of the reasons that we did it the first time was that it was, this company has made You Don't Know Jack, and mostly just You Don't Know Jack, for 15, 20 years. And so it was like, let's do a new You Don't Know Jack and let's bundle it with a bunch of other games. So we know that people want to get the new You Don't Know Jack, but maybe they'll get excited about this other stuff, sort of like what Evan was talking about. And it was really exciting that especially Fibbage and Drawful really took off as much as they did.
Yeah, was it kind of like a creative blossoming for the studio to be like, oh my god, we can make so many small games, everybody can pioneer their own projects, and there's an outlet for all this creativity now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And it reminds me of, like, the Orange Box,
Yeah.
With a lot of people got that probably for Half-Life 2 and, but they fell in love with Team Fortress 2, or they fell in love with Portal. I mean,
Yeah.
Portal is, like, I'm always trying to pitch the game that I think is going to be the dumb little game in the pack, right? So I sort of imagine that people thought that Portal was like an extra. But
Yeah.
Portal was an amazing game. I think Portal was maybe the greatest game in that pack. And so the hope is that this little dumb thing that no one would buy separately will become that thing they really love. And then, maybe you blow it up and make it bigger in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So what platforms is the upcoming party pack being released on?
So Xbox One, PS4, PS3, Steam, which is PC and Mac, and Amazon Fire TV.
Wow. Okay.
And then, hopefully we'll and actually I think it will be on launch day. It will be on some of the other smaller Android TV platforms as well.
Which is the most powerful platform for you guys? Which one did the first party pack have the most sales on?
We probably don't talk about that. So
okay.
I don't know if we do or not, but I mean, it's the big consoles do best for us.
Okay.
We're excited about. We're actually going out to the Amazon conference, or I'm going out tomorrow, and we've really liked developing for the Fire TV because we think a lot of our audience, our potential audience, might not be people who would buy an Xbox One or a PS4. As great as those are, and they're super powerful. Like my parents are never going to have an Xbox One in their house, but they could buy a Fire TV or Apple TV or whatever, $100 box that our games run fine on. And, those people who like play board games and like party games but don't have consoles still seems like a big untapped market for us. So we're really hoping those smaller set-top boxes and whatever catch on, and we can get into more people's homes.
And we've had lots of people tell us, I bought the party pack on the PS4. I love it, but I literally bought a Fire TV stick and the party pack on that just so I can put it in my pocket and take it to a party and plug it into someone's TV. So.
Smart.
It's so smart. I know, like, my family in particular, they're always asking, like, how do we play that drawing game? How do I buy that? And then I'm like, all right, well, take your laptop, plug it in your TV, and then you have to download Steam, and then get something called the Jackbox Party Pack. Like, it's just a complicated process. So, like, the more streamlined that can be, and like, I think Amazon is a great option for that.
Yeah. Also, Steam has done really, really well for us, and I think a lot of that is because of Twitch and playing over Skype. Like, we didn't do it intentionally, but we discovered pretty quickly that because you play through a website and not on local Wi-Fi, you can play with people that aren't in the same room as you. And when we saw people playing Fibbage over Twitch, like a broadcaster being able to play with their viewers, we were like, oh, we immediately were like, how do we make this work better for all our games? And we were pretty far along with the party pack at that point, but we went back in and made the timers longer. We pushed more information to the devices so that you could play along even with the delay from those streaming things.
Awesome. It's super smart. Yeah, and then now you have the audience members. So what is it, like 100,000 people, 10,000 people can play?
10,000 right now. Yeah.
10,000. All right. Well, you really need to up that.
We've
I know
seen
everyone's
one
picking it up.
stream hit the 10,000.
Really? Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
It happens.
Great. Cool. Well, we should probably wrap this up and let you guys get back to work over there. But wanted to say thank you for making the Jackbox Party Packs. They are so much fun.
Yeah, thanks.
You've improved parties across the world.
Oh, wow.
So I guess that's
flattering.
the highest honor for a developer. I think that's how that works.
You've let me find out which of my friends just aren't funny, which is really helpful for me weeding and distilling my friend group. So thank you.
So yeah, everybody.
Thank you guys for having us on. This has been great.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So Jackbox Party Pack 2 comes out next week, October 13th. Is that right?
Yep.
On absolutely everything. So keep your eyes open for that. And thank you so much for tuning into this week's Game Informer show. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll be here waiting for you. Bye.